Yo, what's up, Wesker Bros? How's it going? So, in today's video, I actually have a huge guest. One of the biggest Resident Evil channels out there. I have the pleasure of having on Kai, aka Inkribbon, who also does variety gaming, but is mostly known for Resident Evil. Or everyone in Resident Evil knows who he is. Anyways, I'm gonna bring him in right now. See you guys. Also, let me know how the audio is as well, guys. Much appreciated. How's it going, Kai? How's it going?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Actually, I hear you double. There we go. Okay, if you can talk again. There. Yeah,
All
that
right.
should
Is
work.
there only one of me now? Are we good?
Yeah. We're having two guests. Anyways, yeah, we'll catch up with chat and then we'll start, right? We were actually talking pre-stream. This is the first time that me and Kai have ever met, so yeah, it's really great to have you here, Kai, so we can actually talk about some Resident Evil and perhaps also some Dead Rising near the end of it. We'll throw some Dead Rising in there as well. But how's it going, Kyle? What's up, man? He says Wesker, my favorite video game character of all time. My dad actually contacted original Wesker voice actor, and I'm sending something to him to get signed. Dude, that's amazing. Like the OG Wesker. Yeah, Eric, what's his name? Eric, I'm pretty sure. Kyle says Resident Evil, my favorite franchise of all time. Zombifex says, hey, I made it on time. I was afraid I was going to miss. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Now that I think about it, we actually have Dead Rising playing behind us. I think it would be more appropriate to switch to Resident Evil. We'll do that, shall we? Let's switch it. We'll play some Resident Evil, my
I
bad.
mean, nothing wrong with Dead Rising.
Yeah. He had made it on time, was afraid I was gonna miss. No, man, yeah, you're just in time. Nick Laus, what's up, man? He says exactly. JP Gaming, what's up, man? How's it going? Fuzzy Bear, what's up, dude? Yeah, guys. Yo, 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 hey, Nog. Yeah, how's it going, man? Thank you so much for stopping by. CPK Chance, what's up, man? Thank you so much for stopping by. Zom says, you're a great interviewer, man. I love these types of podcasts. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the support. Spartacus says, "Are you a fan of Attack on Titan?" Well, that's crazy. That's a crazy segue. But you know what? I did watch it. What about you, Kai? Have you watched? Do you watch anime a lot?
I used to watch anime so much, but I'm kind of now and then, and I have not seen Attack on Titan, so I cannot comment
Yeah.
on it.
You know what? For me personally, I that Attack on Titan was actually one of the last animes that I watched because I'm not a big anime watcher. But growing up, there was always shows like Beyblade, there was like Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z. So I don't. Those are the shows that I watched growing
So
up.
I have something to say about that as a gamer that I think you guys might find interesting. I know this is totally not related to anything, but I've gotten into DS games, and I was like playing through all sorts of DS games, and I was like looking at top 10 best ones, and there was a Dragon Ball Z game. I can't remember the name of it, but it basically tells like the story of like the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, like when Goku meets Bulma and all that stuff. And I realized, oh, I much prefer to get the story through a video game than to watch anime. And I realized there's actually a lot of anime video games that it's essentially the show
Yeah.
in video game form. So if you
Yeah.
prefer, you don't have to watch the anime, you can play the game. And it was like this weird revelation where I was like, oh my God, wow, I never thought about that.
Yeah, speaking of which, Dragon Ball is actually releasing another video game that's like a classic. I don't know if you grew up playing the Budokai Tenkaichi series, but they're actually making another one that's releasing later this year. It's actually called Sparking Zero, but it's basically a fighting game. But what's interesting about the Budokai Tenkaichi series is that you always they kind of went through the story very quickly. But I mean, Dragon Ball also has another game for that. I think it's called Kakarot, if I'm not mistaken. How's it going? CP says, "Hey Wesker, hey Kai." Thank you so much, guys, for stopping by. Anyways, guys, let's get started. I guess we're gonna do the interview. I'll move on to more of a discussion about Resident Evil, and maybe we'll talk about other games. But I mean, we just kind of did, right? But yeah. But speaking of games, I definitely want to know, Kai, what's your history with gaming in general? Like, what's your history with Resident Evil? Was Resident Evil your first game, or very curious to hear.
I actually want to do a video that I hope other people would do called, I don't know what to call it, but I called it my gaming career. And basically, I would cover from like birth to like maybe up until like the year 2000. Here's all the games that I played, and then maybe do like a part two of after that. But just throwing that out there. But one of the things that I remember is as a kid, I always had a Game Boy in my hand. Like I was just Super Mario Land, oh my God. And then one day my parents randomly just bought a Super Nintendo. I still don't know why. I have to ask them. And I would just be sitting on the floor in the living room just playing Super Nintendo all the time, like Donkey Kong, Tetris 2, which is such an underrated Tetris game. Oh my god. And then like Street Fighter 2 was actually my first Capcom game. I had I don't remember which version it was because there's like a million versions, and I was never good at it, but I loved it. And then, you know, Mortal Kombat and, you know, all the big staples and a couple of random games here and there. And then when I got my PlayStation for Christmas, that was it. Like that it was just the gates had been open. I was a gamer for life. And I remember I got Ridge Racer, I got Doom, and I got some other game that wasn't very good. But when it came to Resident Evil, I'm actually going to see if I can interview my mom to find out the full story of how I got it, because she just bought it for me one day. Maybe because I had good grades, I don't remember, but literally she just was like, here. And like, I remember riding in the back of the car, like looking at the case, and I was like, oh my God, like, what is this? And Resident Evil found me. It's just random. I didn't ask for it. I didn't even know what Resident Evil was, and instantly obsessed.
And which that was the first one then? The first
2.
Oh, 2. I see. So that's what got you into it. You know, that's so many people got in with 2, right? But yeah, but that's interesting that your mom basically just got you like one of the scariest looking, like the game cover art, like what you just showed. I always thought was like super creepy. I was like, what the hell is that? That looks like something that hides under my bed.
I think it's a zombie like peeking around a corner, but I've never really been sure.
Yeah.
Also, I was like 11 at the time, and it's an M-rated game, so
I see.
I didn't have a lot of rules growing up. It was just like whatever.
Yeah,
really
you know,
fine.
that makes sense. Yeah, Ted. Yeah, I think it's just for me. I was looking at it from my perspective during like 2000. I think that's when I got 2000. I think 2001. That's when I got my first PlayStation. So I kind of got it a little late into the game. But you know, my mom actually rented Silent Hill, and that's basically my first survival horror experience, which is intense.
Man, Silent Hill back in the day, like. See, Resident Evil is like cool. Silent Hill is just scary.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't play it if the sun had gone down.
Yeah.
I would have nightmares. I was too afraid. But I wanted to play it because it was like, oh my God, like this is so cool. But I was like,
Well, that's what happened with me. My mom was playing it we were playing it at night. I don't know, it was like maybe 8 or something. It wasn't too late. But yeah, she was playing it, and I was playing it with her. But then after I was like, okay, I want to go to bed. But she was like, no, we got to find that girl. We got to do it. She was like locked in. And I was like, she went to like the school, and I was like, nah, mom, okay, I got to go to bed. I don't want to get nightmares. Like let's end it. She's like, okay. And so that was like, I guess technically my first survival, you know, horror. But then after I actually quickly found Dino Crisis. That was my kind of introduction, and then it quickly followed to Resident Evil. But that's so interesting too, that you said you were basically like a Nintendo kid. So you grew up with you said Donkey Kong and stuff, and
I was a Nintendo kid just because, I mean, that's kind of all there was before PlayStation. You know, I didn't really have. I mean, my cousin had a Genesis and stuff, but when my parents brought home the Super Nintendo, I was like, okay, well now I got my own, and I played a whole bunch of other stuff. Like I remember really liking this like Scooby-Doo game and other stuff, but I'm actually not really that big of a Nintendo guy, to be honest. I mean, I have like the fun nostalgia memories of Super Nintendo games, but I didn't really like solidify as a gamer until I got my PlayStation. Once, like, because 3D graphics, I mean, that's what I went to school for, because I was just, from the moment I saw them, I was like obsessed. Even Donkey Kong, actually, because I don't know if people know, those were 3D models that were converted into 2D sprites. You know, and I didn't know how games worked back then. So I was like, oh my God, is this 3D? Like, what's going on? Wow.
Yeah, so back then where you were like, dang, this is so, like, it's so real. Like, I think there was an interview where they were like, I think it was like early 90s or something. They were interviewing a bunch of kids, and they're like, for the PlayStation 2, actually. So no, it should have been like 2000 or something. And they were interviewing a bunch of kids, and they're like, dude, it's like super real. Some guys to teenagers were like, bro, it's like almost real. Like, it's just real. Back in the day, I guess that's the closest, right, that we had. But, so
yeah, like Resident Evil 4, we thought graphics were just never gonna get better than that. Like, it was like the ultimate, you know, it was amazing.
Yeah.
But here we are now with, you know, games that look like movies.
Yeah, and going from PS3, I guess, to PS4, right? I think that's where it kind of went a little. It kind of what's the word? It kind of plateaued a little. Like, it's going very slowly with getting better and better graphics. But I like, especially from like PS1 or Nintendo to PS1 to PS2 was crazy. Like, and then going all the way to PS3, the jumps were insane, graphically. But I guess now we're kind of slowly getting better and better, I think. But what's your perspective on that?
So I can actually give you a weird little art history lesson to kind of use this as an example. So, like the statue of David and Venus de Milo, all those famous Greek statues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, fun fact, they weren't white originally; they were actually painted. But what happened was they just stopped one day, and historians were trying to figure out, like, why did people just stop sculpting these beautiful statues? And the reason was they were so realistic that people just got bored with them. They're like, why am I going to look at this statue? I could just look at a person. And then they kind of fell out of fashion. And I think the exact same thing is going to start happening with gaming, because I'm feeling it too. I don't want realistic. I will go watch a movie if I want that. I want video games that look like video games. Like, I love being able to, like, see the polygons and, like, the textures, and I don't know, maybe because I'm a millennial, but like, yeah.
I mean, I'm a millennial as well. I'm not Gen Z, but just so everybody knows. But dude, that's interesting. So I guess the theory goes that back in the day, people just didn't like this, didn't like, it fell out of fashion to make those statues. Is that what you're saying, or it fell out of fashion to want to see those statues?
Well, both, because
Okay.
one affected the other. But basically, it's just once you reach a point of hyper realism, it's no longer interesting, because it's like, well, like, okay, that's what that looks like. Yep. Okay.
But is it
like,
hyper realism too? Isn't it like more than real, I guess? So I guess like the statues, like, I guess what you mean is that, the statues were so perfect, like, obviously compared to like the average guy, that people were just fell out of fashion. Like, they didn't care to look at someone that was like, a 10 compared to them.
Yeah.
Is that
so like, when it comes to video games, I don't care if you can see the character's pores. I don't care how detailed every strand of hair is. Is the game fun?
Yeah.
Is the story good? Like, that's what I care about. Like,
No, and that's a very excellent point. Yeah. I mean, like, even like there's games now where they look fantastic. Like, I'm trying to think of an example of a game recently that I played where I was like, this looks great, but like you mentioned, the story was just not there, right? And it's like, I don't want to continue playing this. But yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. So I guess what you're saying is that you don't want the games to, you're kind of fearful, or I guess worried, that if games start getting way too realistic, way too much, that people are just going to lose interest, that they're not going to want to play gaming, or even, or what you're saying is that they need story and, and good characters to make a game.
Well, also there's a sustainability problem, not climate change, but with the actual companies, because what I'm seeing more and more, I follow gaming news a lot, and there's so many companies that put all their eggs in one basket, put like millions and millions of dollars into these huge AAA games and release them, and because no one cares. They're just like, because we're so used to these amazing graphics that's not impressive anymore. And it just takes one screenshot of like a bug or a glitch or something, and then everybody starts like, boo, this game sucks. And then that whole company comes crashing down because they put all their money on that. Whereas you have like indie games that are like PS1 graphics, and they're making like, $100,000, and they were made for essentially nothing. So it's a weird time right now with all of that.
Yeah. No, I definitely we'll definitely dive into that even more later on, because that was definitely something that, because of course I definitely wanted to know more about your perspective coming from like a game developer, right? Because obviously, I mean, I'm a gamer, but I don't understand, like, the ins and outs of like behind the scenes of how games are made. But that's a very good point that you brought up, right? That at the end of the day, graphics aren't everything, right? You definitely need the whole package. And you know what? Actually, no, you actually just need good story, good characters, good gameplay, and even the graphics, because with indie games, the graphics aren't always like top tier, or like their PS1 graphics, right? Like, I'm thinking of like a game that a lot of survival horror enthusiasts have been talking about is Crow Country. That's a game that I was following. Exactly. I still have to play it. Have you played it? I have not.
I played the demo, and it was very. It made me like feel nostalgia for a game that I never played. It's interesting, but it's worth a play. It's fun.
Yeah. No, definitely. And the other thing I was also going to ask you is that you mentioned that you first started with Super Nintendo. Did you also go to Nintendo 64? And how old were you during that time? Because you didn't specify age, because you said you were from like 0 from birth to 10, so it must have been really young, right? How old were you when
Yeah,
you first
I was
played?
I was born in '89.
Yeah.
So like when the 64 came out, I think it was about 11 or 12. And I remember at one point I had all the systems. I had like the PS1, the 64, the Dreamcast, but I kind of neglected my 64. I had GoldenEye and
Everyone
Gex,
had that.
and
Everyone had
I
golden.
can't even remember. I literally bought it just for GoldenEye. Like I remember I
Yeah.
had the glacier purple one and all that, but I really didn't play it very much. I didn't have any friends, so like I didn't have anyone to play any of the multiplayer games with, and I loved my PlayStation so much, and also the Dreamcast. Oh my god, when that came out, I was like, when I played Dead or Alive 2, that's when I was like, graphics will never get better than this. Like, oh
Wait,
my god,
Dead or Alive, is that the
like
way with like the hot chicks doing volleyball or
yeah,
just
with the
chilling?
jiggling and all that, which is it's so sad because it's such a good, like mechanically good fighting game, but everyone just looks at the boobs. Like, there's more to it than the boobs, I swear.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Dude, that's hilarious. And you know what? The other thing I was also gonna we were kind of talking about it pre-stream, but this is something that I noticed too. This is about your videos actually. Is that a couple of months ago I was watching one of your older videos talking about OG RE4. I don't remember the specific video, but I remember in the video you basically stated that you had an abuelita. And I definitely wanted to ask you what your ethnicity was because you definitely look Latin. We were talking about that pre-stream, but you definitely look somewhat Latin, right? Like a white Latin person. But,
Well,
uh,
it depends on who you ask. Like, I think most people just assume that I'm like a white guy, and I know this because people will talk crap about me in Spanish right in front of me, and I'm like, I can understand you, you know.
bro.
But yeah, I lived with my grandma for a lot of my childhood and teen years, and we mostly spoke Spanish. And I just remember like playing Resident Evil 4. And in case you guys don't know, pretty much everything in Spanish in
Yeah.
that game is really vulgar and like it's nothing but bad words and profanity. And my grandma's very religious, so like she'd walk in and like they'd be saying something horrible, and she'd just look at me like, oh, this is the game you're playing, and I was like in trouble. And I was like, I'm sorry. It's like that meme of like, blah blah when your mom walks in, like, it goes from like killing zombies to like profanity, and it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, like the ¿Qué carajos estás haciendo aquí? Like those
Yeah, I
those are
don't know if you do like cursing on your stream, but if you don't, I can't say what he says translated because it's
yeah. You
like
know what?
nothing but F word.
I don't normally swear, but it's funny when I like for example I did a bunch of translation videos for like the remake of RE4, and I was I did there were so many swear words where like there's so many swear words.
Hmm.
So I guess I only swear in Spanish, I guess, but I don't know. Maybe it's I don't know. Like I guess on the channel, yeah, only in Spanish.
Yeah, I had thought about doing a short where it's like Resident Evil 4, but all the villagers speak English, and then I found out I can't because it would get demonetized because like I guess shorts are
Yeah.
more strict about language, and I was like, okay, well, but it would not be a good video, like because it's yeah, to Spanish ears, it's like whoa.
Well, like what word and specifically did your grandma was like what the like what scene if you I don't know if you remember because it's a long time ago, right? But what scene where
Oh, I
did she
remember.
arrive? I'm curious what or did you get a
It
talking
was
to?
right at the beginning of the game. I was playing like a new game because I had just beat professional or whatever,
Yeah.
and it's when Leon walks into the first cabin and like,
Oh,
have you
okay.
seen this girl or whatever?
Yeah. Oh, I
Um,
see.
he basically says,
Oh yeah, ¿Qué carajos
it's the word
estás haciendo aquí?
carajo, like
Yeah.
yeah, it's like what the f are you doing here? Get
Yeah.
the f out of here, you bastard! Like I'm gonna kill
Yeah.
you, and
Yeah.
but it's
That's
a lot
funny.
more aggressive in Spanish.
That's funny that that's the quote that I used, and that's sure enough that was the exact scene, right? ¿Qué carajos estás haciendo aquí? Lárgate de aquí, cabrón, right? Like, yeah, get the f out of here. But I mean, it kind
Exactly.
of makes sense. What's your take on that actually? That scene, because I've been hearing a lot of people say that Leon acted inappropriate in that scene. I mean, obviously you understood
Yeah.
what was happening, but for English people, they were like, "Oh no, I don't know what's happening here." But what was your
Well,
take on that
if
scene?
you were filing a police report just objectively detailing the list of what happened, Leon walked into someone's home without knocking or anything, and then held a photo in their face. And when that person justifiably tried to defend themselves. He shot him in the head and then called Hunt again and was like, the villagers are hostile. It's like, dude, you just walked into this guy's house and shot him. You didn't even know if he was like a zombie or infected or whatever.
And also the guy didn't have like red eyes. Also, like this is not like a typical zombie that Leon is used to. It's, you know, he doesn't know. He just thinks these are normal, you know, Spanish villagers. But that's a funny point, right? Because the guy actually acted kind of like normal, right? He was like, what the F are you doing here? Like, get the F out of here. Get out of my house. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's what I'd say if someone came into my house. It'd be like, do I know you? Can I help you?
Dude, yeah. No, that was something that I was hearing. Like, I think people on Reddit were talking about that a couple of years ago. I'm like, yeah, that's always something I found really weird how Leon reacted to that. But obviously, when the guy came with the knife, but his reaction before, yeah, the villagers are hostile. Like, it's funny, but yeah. But anyways, yeah, I was gonna ask, like, if you remember how old you were with those systems. Like, how old were you? Said you were 11 when you had everything. You had the Dreamcast. I actually never had a Dreamcast. So I actually don't. Yeah, I don't know. It was very rare to have like to see someone in the neighborhood have a Dreamcast. I don't know. I think it was just maybe my neighborhood.
It really didn't sell that well, so like, I'm not that surprised. But it's a beloved console, and But I know I was 11 when I played Resident Evil 2, but I was probably like 12 by the time that the Dreamcast came out. I don't know. It's a long time ago. I'm an old man now. It's hard to remember.
Back in my days.
Seriously.
I see.
We used to have a screaming robot send the internet through the phone. Okay, Grandpa, let's get you to bed.
But anyways, speaking about your ethnicity too, you said you're part Mexican, but we're also talking pre-stream that you said that you did grow up, right, with a lot of Mexican. You said you were half Mexican?
Yeah, but like I was kind of just raised Mexican. I'm from El Paso, Texas, which is essentially like living in Mexico.
Yeah,
like everybody speaks Spanish. If you're white, like you're weird. And I remember I was like the white kid. So you know, even though I wasn't, and like people would make fun of me because my Spanish wasn't like that good and stuff. So it was weird. I don't know. Like I feel very like I don't know where I belong. But
yeah. No, you know what? I kind of feel like that too. I mean, I've grew up everywhere. Personally, for me, for those of you that don't know, I'm actually part Peruvian, part Chilean, but I have so many ethnicities. I have, you know, Italian, German, Black. I'm also part Black. My grandmother is half Black, so yeah. So I have, you know, I'm kind of everything. Is what my friends always say. You're like international, but no,
Did you take one of those DNA tests?
No, you know, I don't have to because, you know, I'm pretty much everything. So yeah, I kind of already know just from my family lineage, but obviously I'm mostly, Peruvian and Chilean, and, you know, I am also indigenous from that region as well. So like even in the systems of Chile, I am considered indigenous. So even though technically I shouldn't be, because I think it goes through to like the 4th generation. But anyways, I don't know. I'm not complaining. but yeah. So
because you never know. My mom took one and found out that she's mostly Italian, which means I'm probably actually, even though I was raised Mexican, I'm actually like from Italian descent, which is so weird. And then I never met my real dad. So according to my mom, he's German, but who knows what he could be. But I'm kind of scared. I'm like, man, maybe I don't want to like, you know, go down that road and have an identity crisis. Life is hard enough. Like,
yeah, you already feel like an outsider. You want to feel more more confused. Yeah, I get that. But yeah, I guess I'll read some chats just to catch up, because you know what it is building up. Axel, what's up, man? Thank you so much for stopping by. It says, yeah, the new Dragon Ball game looks good. Dragon Ball Fighter Z is good also. Yeah, that's like the 2D fighter, right? I never really liked that one. I mostly like the 3D kind of combat.
Oh, the one that I mentioned, by the way, is Dragon Ball Origins and Dragon Ball Origins 2 for the DS. Like it tells the story of the anime, and they're good games. They're fun.
Yeah, I remember when it released. I remember hearing about it. Rock, how's it going, Rock? Thank you so much for stopping by. It says, I watch you too, Ink Ribbon. That's awesome. Zombie Effect says PS1 to PS2 was a good leap in graphics. Then from PS2 to PS3 was mind-blowing, which made games start to look more like movies. Yeah, especially with like Metal Gear Solid 4, right? The Gun Patriots.
Oh my god, so good.
That's like, wow, okay, we're in the next generation now. But from PS4, yeah, PS4 made for better lighting, and PS5 has better frame rate. Yeah, that's a very good, very good point. All about those tatas. Oh, you're referring to Dead or Alive, like what Increment was talking about. Raccoon City Pizza, what's up, man? He says, yeah, great collab, dude. Yeah, thank you so much for stopping by, dude. Always appreciated. Zom says RE4 was the first RE game to finally not focus on zombies, right? Yeah. And it's funny
Yep.
how Leon treats just random citizens, right? According to the beginning. American Ninja says Leon is still a rookie even when rescuing the president's daughter. I guess from losing Ashley so many times. Americana, or I guess that was, wait, was that his first mission that Leon went? No, 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 no. That's no, because we had Operation Javier. Never
Operation
mind.
Javier
Yeah,
happened, and
yeah,
then 4.
yeah. I got a copy of RACV when I was 10 before I had the Dreamcast and saved money to get the Dreamcast. I loved it. Dude, that's, oh wow, you played, you know what? I heard that the Dreamcast was the Dreamcast version of Resident Evil Code Veronica. One of my viewers was telling me, and you know what? Funny enough, he's also one of your viewers. I forgot his name though, my bad. But anyways, he was telling me about that there was differences with Dreamcast, and I had no idea because I never played the Dreamcast. But like they cut out a bunch of stuff, like the Wesker throw in, Claire at the beginning. I was like, bro, I gotta play the Dreamcast version. This is so weird. And also, like, I think you covered it as well, right? You also mentioned how he looked more like Leonardo DiCaprio, right? In that version, right?
They completely
Steve.
changed like Steve's hair, and
To avoid a lawsuit.
crazy.
Probably, yeah. Capcom was like, wow, we should change that. Zom says, wow, you're kind of everything like me. I'm part French, British, Vietnamese, Chinese, of four languages. Dude, that's awesome. And do you speak those 4 languages? I was actually learning Mandarin when I was 5 years old, but that would have been my 4th language, I guess. But then after I started learning Japanese, but haven't continued that.
Japanese is so hard.
But I mean, you speak Spanish though, so you got an edge, right? Because it's so Japanese,
in
the only other language.
pronunciation,
Yeah,
that's about it.
but for writing, no, I skipped the writing.
Yeah,
Writing's
kanji
just,
is what
yeah.
makes it hard.
Yeah, yeah. Katakana and hiragana is not bad. But Raidu says, what was your introduction to Dead Rising? You know, we're actually going to talk about that once we get to the Dead Rising section of the podcast. So stay tuned, Raidu. Rock says, I would love a CV remake, dude. That's
Same.
amazing. Yeah, no, I think that should be the next one. Americana Ninja, we're almost caught up. He says he's a rookie by going inside a stranger's house and shoving a picture in his face. Yeah, yeah, definitely. He should have knocked. I think that's just a rookie at being a decent human, right? He should have yelled out instead of just gone really quiet to the guy and showed. Zom says, I only speak French. Since I live in Canada, French is easier. Oh, tu parles français? Ok, moi aussi. Ça, c'est ma langue maternelle. Aussi, mais j'ai pas parlé français pour 15 ans. Alors, yeah, I forgot. But that's cool, dude. That's cool. That's right. You were telling me you're from Ottawa, right? From that side of the country. That's cool, dude. Raccoon City Pizza says, I'm technically part Native American. A lot of Native American heritage here in Tennessee. That's cool, dude. That is cool, man. Yeah, I want to see
Nice.
Chris versus Leon game over the Redfield bloodline. Nice. I want to see Chris and yeah. Okay,
Oh,
wait,
that
what?
meme.
I don't know what that. Wait, is it a meme? I see. Yeah. Anyways, I guess we caught up to chat, guys. We will continue with the chat after. But anyways, speaking of which, I'm gonna drink some water. It's really dry here. There's been a heat wave. I don't know about you. This feels like there's been a heat wave all throughout the country. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, it's the humidity. Like, oh my god, it's killing me.
Yeah. You're from like the East Coast, right? Like the east side of the country, right?
Well,
Or
I
that's where you live.
in
Yeah,
East
my
Coast
bad.
now, but I grew up in the desert where it was just
Yeah.
like arid heat, and
That's
I've
like-
never had humidity. Oh,
Yeah.
I hate it. That's why I'm so shiny right now. Like, I just no matter what
Yeah.
I do, I'm wet. I'm like sweaty and sticky and ugh.
You went to Japan, right? How was that? Were you there during the summer months?
I for some reason usually was only there in the winter months, but
Oh, you were
when
smart.
I lived there, I remember the summers were really hot. And one thing that I learned was when it's humid, fans, like just fanning yourself,
Yeah.
is super effective. 'Cause
Yeah.
they would hand out these like
The big-
advertisements on fans,
Yeah.
and you would just
yeah.
like, ah,
Yeah. I actually got one of my friends at one of the expos that I visited where I actually talked to a bunch of Resident Evil cosplayers, which was my first time going to an expo. It was a really great experience, but my friend actually passed me one of those Japanese fans. I'm like, no, dude, thank you. This is gonna help. I don't have it next to me though, bro. But
they're worth it.
Yeah, yeah. But speaking of that, actually, that's very curious. So you lived in Japan. How long did you live there? What was your experience there? Actually, yeah, I'm curious.
I lived there for about 2 years. It was like
Dang,
around
nice.
2011 to 2013,
Oh, so that's what
and
I went there. Yeah, during that time. Nice.
oh, there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an amazing time. I miss it all the time. I like I've already told people if I ever have a nervous breakdown, I'm not gonna buy a Ferrari or whatever. I'm just gonna like you'll
Buy a
I'm just gonna
house.
go to Tokyo for a couple months
Oh, I
and
see.
I'll be back when I'm back.
I've heard the houses in Japan are super cheap compared to like I don't know how it is in America, but in Canada to buy a house is like you have to be a millionaire. Like it's like 600,000, so
Oh,
like a
it's the
million
same
dollar.
here. The real estate
Yeah,
market is just gone off the deep end. The
yeah.
hard part isn't paying for a house in Japan, it's getting approved to pay for a house as a foreigner.
Oh, really? I thought it was really easy. I heard that they're
If
really
you're
lax.
if you're married to someone who's Japanese, it's easy. But yeah, foreigners have a bad reputation for like not paying rent and just disappearing and stuff like
Oh,
that.
I
So
see.
there's all sorts of extra paperwork and
I see. No, no, but I mean like to buy a house. To buy a house.
no, yeah, even to
Oh,
buy a
really?
house, like
Oh, I see.
renting, buying, all that stuff. They're
Yeah.
very like that was actually what led me to finally leave Japan is unfortunately they are very xenophobic. Like
Yeah.
they'll love you, you're American, you're cool,
Yeah.
whatever, but you're not one of us. And
Yeah.
eventually
Yeah.
you hit that point where you realize you could be fluent in Japanese, you could have lived in Japan your whole life and they will never accept you. And it's really sad, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, how was finding a house there? Because I've heard about that. I've heard that there's that they don't trust foreigners at all. They don't even accept like if you reserve for like a restaurant or whatever, do a reservation. I heard like some foreigners like they put like a random Japanese name like Tanaka or whatever. Like it's just like a typical so that they get passed, because if they say, "Oh, like, my name is Smith," they're like, "Oh, shoot, no, no. We're full. We're
Yeah, I never had that happen at restaurants, but it has happened in other situations. But I remember I ended up getting it was this Russian woman who was sort of like a liaison where, she would help you, like
Hmm.
she talked to the Japanese people because she was like an actual, I guess she married a Japanese guy, so she was sort of in the middle and she'd like show you apartments and take you around and help you take care of the paperwork. So that she was like a godsend. And I remember, so I'm really scared of bees, and apparently she was too. And we were walking,
Well,
and
the
a friend was
bees,
with
the
me.
bees are crazy in Japan. The wasps, right? Like they're
Yeah, yeah,
killer
it wasn't a
wasps.
hornet though. It was just
Oh,
a
okay.
it was
Oh,
just a
yeah,
bee.
hornet. Yeah.
But she was walking ahead of me, and it was in like her scarf. And I told my friend, I was like, "Oh my god, she has a bee!" So she starts flailing, and the bee flies at me. So my friend's standing there while me and her are just flailing in the street. All these Japanese people are staring at us, like, "What the hell?" And yeah, but I got my apartment. It was
Dang.
actually triangle shaped, and it was in the middle of Ikebukuro, which is a prime real estate area, and it was like
Mm,
I think $1,000 a month, which in Tokyo is like amazing.
yeah,
But
yeah.
oh my god, it was so weird.
So,
Like
so
you don't
what?
understand, like when it's triangle shaped, you can't put furniture on corners and
Yeah, dude, that's wild, and especially Tokyo. I personally I wasn't a big fan of Tokyo. When I went over there, it was just I lived there for like a month. It was right after I graduated, so like 2012. My best friend who was Japanese, he was teaching me, some Japanese while I was helping him with his English, throughout high
mm,
school. He was like, you know what, like I'm gonna be going back to Japan this summer. Like, come and hang out with me, and and I'm like, sure, let's do it. Let me think about it. So I gave him a couple. It was a couple months, but I think it was like May, and we went in July. But he's actually from Aomori, so Hachinohe, so the north
okay.
of Japan. But I actually really liked like the countryside more. I don't know
Mm,
for Tokyo, for me, I don't know if maybe you could speak to this as well, but I don't know Tokyo. I noticed everybody looked like they had ants in their pants. Like everyone's just rushing to like the next is just go 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 go, and it's like, bro, like you know what? For me, it didn't really bother me that there were so many people because obviously I did go to like Shibuya or like all the locations. I also went to Kabukicho, but not because of like dirty stuff. Which, if for those of you that don't know, is the red light district. I
mm,
went there because I'm a huge Ryuga Go Tokyo fan. So when
mm,
I learned that this is actually based on the actual location, and by the way, they're actually working on a show that's releasing in October. I was like, bro, I got to check it out. So I went with my friend. We went with his friends, and some of the chicks were like, why are we in the red light district? I'm like, I don't know. I just wanted to show up and see how everything was. Sure enough, the map, because I knew like the map. Like the back of my hand, so I was like, dude, I I was like, my friend's like, how do we get out of here? How do we get back to the south? I'm like, I got you. Let's do it, because playing those games. Have you ever played the Do You Go Tokyo?
I haven't,
Oh, I
but I know
see.
Kabukicho. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't like know Kabukicho, but
Hey, hey. No, no, I
no,
get
like,
you. I get
listen,
you.
if you ever go to Japan, like, having some fun will not be an issue one way or another. Like, it's really interesting actually as a guy because I got catcalled all the time by girls, which was just like what like
Yeah.
reality am I living in? Like, am I in an anime? Like, what is going on?
Yeah,
But
yeah, and you were talking before about how it was very xenophobic. I noticed that. Um, this is something that I just noticed with like a lot of when I hear foreigners, especially white foreigners that go to Japan, I've heard that they kind of get hassled, right? Like for example, I was mentioning the restaurant. You were mentioning like apartments and stuff. I did notice that I actually I didn't get any racism when I was in Japan, which is wild because I'm brown, right? So like I go to like a thing, people think I'm Arab, people think like at airports, people are not fun. It's not a fun time at airports. They're always checking me, bringing the dogs over. And I'm like, bro, like okay. But when I went to Japan, that was actually one of the things that I really thought was nice was that I never got like racially like profiled or like stopped by police or anything of that nature. But it's almost like I guess for white people, it's not the best, right? I mean, as we discussed, you're half, right? You're half, you're half.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
but
never really, I wouldn't say I got hassled. I just got stared at a lot.
I see.
And like, there's this weird phenomenon, especially when you live there for a while, you become like a sort of unintentional local celebrity, and everybody like wants to like give you stuff and be your friend, but it's like not for the right reasons. Like
Oh,
it's almost like they want to be like, look, I'm friends with a foreigner, like, and you're just there
mm.
like being paraded around, like, okay. But
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's not bad. I'd rather have that than someone be mean. So
Yeah, yeah. But I guess like yeah, Japanese people are super nice, right? So they'll
yeah,
never
no,
be mean to you face forwards like in other countries, right? They'll never they'll
no,
never step up to you.
they'll be very polite, but
Yeah.
you know, the truth is still there. You have to just dig a little deeper. But
Yeah, yeah.
no, I love Japan. I would go back in a heartbeat. And my brother is actually getting stationed there. He's in the Navy, so I
Nice.
totally have a reason to go back. I just have to save up because it's pricey. But I'm
Yeah.
excited to go back. I just have to like it has to be a work trip so I can write it off. So I'm like, okay, I have to find all the Resident Evil stuff and gaming stuff that I can possibly film while
Yeah.
I'm there, so I can turn it into a work trip.
Yeah, well, that's same. You know, I actually have the same plan. I definitely want to go back because it's been more than 10 years. But going over there, doing so much content for Resident Evil, especially, right? But yeah, but I guess the other question too I was going to ask was, what brought you to Japan? How did you stay there for 3 years? You were obviously there for visa, right? Were you part of the JET program? I know a lot of foreigners get in with JET
Oh no,
program. What?
the jet program is amazing. I kind of wish I had done that, but
Yeah.
I just like I said, I used to watch a lot of anime, and you know, I just became obsessed. I've always loved Asian culture and just Japanese stuff in general, like even Japanese food, and I just thought it was so cool, and I wanted to go. So after I graduated high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to go to school for, so I waited, and then I decided to save up money and just go to Japan, and it actually didn't go well the first time. I had never been away from home. I had never been even like out of Texas, and I ended up
So going,
briefly homeless in
dang.
Japan, which was like a
Oh,
whole thing.
you know what? I
Yeah.
heard I heard about that. I think I was watching your podcast where you're talking about how you were home. Yeah. So what happened? That's crazy. It was only for like a day or two, right? Or a week, or I don't remember the specifics.
It was about 8 days,
Yeah.
and I survived from change that I found near vending machines, and then I'd go to 7-Eleven and get those little like the rice cakes or
Yeah.
whatever.
Onigiri,
And
right?
I
Or
literally slept in like alleys with all my stuff. And a couple times I was woken up by police, and they're like, "You can't sleep here," and you know, I assume that's what they told me. I don't know, but yeah. And then I finally got a friend to give me money to get home, and as soon as I got home, I got a job and I paid them back, and then
yeah.
I spent. That's what I went to school for, so as I could get a visa, and that would never happen to me again. So it all worked out, and I grew up very fast after that experience. But you know, it
Yeah.
was like it's one of those things that I think everyone needs to have a life experience like that, because
Like a
it's
wake up
so
call.
easy. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you can just like complain about all this dumb stuff, like, life is hard. And then you like experience something like that, and you're like, you know what? Life is great. Like, I'm so lucky for everything that I have, and it puts things in perspective. So, ever since that experience, I think I've been a better person. I went from like being you know, when you're like a teenager and nothing can hurt me, I'm so cool, like, da da da. And, you know, then you get humbled real quick.
Yeah, and also being you like you've lived up to that point, you lived your whole life just in Texas. So it's very clear that you were definitely naive about the world and how dangerous it could be. Yeah, so I guess so that ended up happening. So that's basically you said you stayed there for 3 years, right, in Japan. So I guess that was right at the end of it, and that's how you got back home. But I see. So before, since you didn't get there with the jet program, did you just stay with a friend, or did you go over there like? Did you work in Japan as well, or no, or what was that
Yeah,
situation?
I stayed with a friend until I moved there, and then I was like on my own. But I was actually doing a lot of modeling work. There's a ton of commercials and music videos where I'm like in the background or like
That's
doing
cool.
stuff like that. And there's a couple movies that I want to buy, but like they were only released in Japan because I want to see like because we did stuff in front of green screen and I have no idea. I couldn't understand what was going on. So I was just like there's one I was like a Roman gladiator and they were like throwing pillows at us and I had no idea. It was Tedmae Romae. It's spelled like Thermae Romae, but it's about that. It was a manga series that turned into an anime, which turned into a movie about a guy who every time he touches water, he gets sent through time. And it's apparently like a huge franchise because whenever I would tell like my students, because I also taught English, they were like, "Oh my god!" Like I'm like, I don't know.
That's
But yeah,
cool. I see. So it was
a
it was
lot
a
of
big you're a big deal at the school then.
uh,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. I had a lot of weird jobs teaching English because you can make so much money teaching English in Japan. It's crazy. I was making like $70 an hour. It was amazing.
Dang.
And
Dang.
the main job that I had was at this company, which they've since become a horrible, toxic place to work. So now I'm just going to talk openly about them. But they're called Telephone English, and they're a subsidiary company of Disney. And
Wow.
literally, imagine a call center full of full-grown adults just singing like the ABC song or like all these little cutesy songs over the phone to Japanese kids. That's literally what it was. $70
That's
an hour.
weird. Wait, that's
And
such an odd job. Yeah, that's
yeah, do
good.
you
I
know what
mean,
it's like to sing the ABC song 60 times an hour?
yeah, your voice is probably just like dud or not. I mean, if it depends on if you were really
uh,
like projecting, but dang, that could get annoying. Yeah.
well, what actually happened is you just stop like processing. So I'd be in the middle of singing without realizing, and I have to like sort of like it's like stepping onto like an escalator where I'm like, okay, what letter? Oh, okay. Like, it was weird, but it paid really well. That's the only reason that I did it.
Dang, yeah. Well, that's cool that you kind of did a bunch of different jobs, dude. That's so cool. But yeah, dude, you should definitely get that next time you go to Japan. Definitely get that movie so you can show the viewers, right? Like, hey, I was in this movie. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
No, like, but it's frustrating because everything I was in got cut out. Like, I was in a music video for Kodakumi,
Hmm.
and like they shot so much close-ups of me and all this stuff, and then when you watch the music video, I'm like blurred out in the background for like 3 seconds, and that's it. And like we spent like 12 hours in a freezing cold pool, and it was this whole thing, and I'm barely in it. I'm like, ugh. And it was for
Yeah.
pachinko, so like they didn't even air it anywhere.
Oh, I see. So what it was like in the pachinko screen, like just like a very quick
Yeah,
thing. But yeah,
like
I
it
see.
was made
Yeah,
for a pachinko machine of Kodakumi, and I
I
was just
see.
like, I've
Yeah, I
got
mean
so
that's
many like weird stories of that whole.
yeah. But I mean that's how show
Anyway,
business is, right? Even with like top tier actors. I was in one scene with in a show in a cowboy show recently, and this actor had to do this huge monologue. So he had to memorize the whole lines, and at the end he went up, did it, and then it's like all of that got cut. I was still in the scene though. You could see me just like nodding and be like, "Yeah," but his whole thing, I'm
yeah,
like, "Bro, that's like the worst." Like we actually have to talk, and it's like at the end, "Oh no, we don't need that." The editor's like, "No, we'll skip," and it's like, "Bro," but anyways, I guess we'll segue back into your I guess your YouTube career. I definitely want to know what the origins of your name Inkribbon came from. What inspired you to start a YouTube channel? Because I before I do have to to preface, I do want to say that Inkribbon is actually such a good name. I think you have the best name in the Resident Evil community because there's so many Resident Evil YouTube. I mean, no shade, but there's a lot of random names. Like there's so many random names that like if you read the name only, you couldn't tell that this like the YouTuber was a Resident Evil YouTuber. and it's like, you know, like they'll have random names, but I think yours is probably like my favorite because it's on brand, it sticks. You play the games, you run into ink ribbons, so you're like, oh, I'm thinking of Kai right now. But definitely want to hear your
Yeah,
origin of
that
that.
was not intentional, by the way. Like that, but that happens even when I'm playing. I'm like, oh, ink ribbons, hi. So there was a gaming channel. When I started YouTube, I was doing it on my own channel, and I was trying to be funny and do skits and stuff. And it turns out comedy is really hard, and it's not my best skill. So I started a gaming channel on the side, and when I named it, there was a channel called Screw Attack, and I really liked their content. And then they ended or disappeared or whatever. But I remember when I was trying to name my channel, I was like, okay, they chose Screw Attack, which is from Metroid. And I was like, okay, I should choose something from a game that I like. And I thought a lot about Tomb Raider, Metal Gear Solid, and I just kept coming back to Resident Evil. And I thought about First Aid Spray, I thought about Green Herb, but I just kept coming back to Ink Ribbon because I liked the way it sounded. And also Ink Ribbons like saved the game, they saved the day, and I liked it. And then I just went hard with the branding. I was like, people are going to know like ink ribbon videos or whatever, which for the first couple months, I like, even now, if you go to my first videos, like some of them don't even have like 1,000 views. Like people just didn't even know who I was. And I was trying all sorts of stuff. And then one day I just got a notification, like your video has 20,000 views. And I was like, wait, what? And like, like it went off the rails. And I was like, oh my God. But the reason that I started making my content was simply because knowing all the stuff I know about Resident Evil, I wanted to watch videos about it, and no one was doing videos. Like I'd watch videos that were like almost what I wanted to see, or people who would get information wrong, and I was like, like I could make a better video than that. And then one day I was like, wait, why don't I? And then I did, and now all that nerdiness is paying off, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's very similar, I guess, to my story as well. I mean, like, like I wanted to see specific videos in the community, but it's a very small community, right? I mean, there's always newer content creators that kind of grow. I mean, how long have you been doing Ink? How long has it been?
Oh God, like 8 years.
Dang, yeah. So it's been a while. So you've probably seen a lot of Resident Evil creators come and go, but even I've only been doing it for 3 years, and I've seen there's a lot of new ones that pop up, and then they leave for they leave essentially, but yeah, there's since there's not that many people in the space, I definitely wanted to make videos that I would want to watch. So that it's kind of the same, right? I mean, obviously you're making different videos than what I was making, but yeah, that's very similar. And but no, like that's so cool that we're gonna do either green herb, first aid, or ink ribbon. That's very interesting. You're almost called those other names. I see. Ink ribbon was definitely the best, though. I'm glad you picked it, because
I'm very proud of it. I didn't think it would be this like big of a thing, but I guess hindsight, it worked out. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
But if I was to give advice to anyone who's thinking about doing a channel, like that's the thing, is not only like, I mean, get your branding down before you even start, but also, like you said, the golden rule: make videos that you would want to watch. Don't try to please the algorithm or like try to guess what people want to see. Make the videos that you would like to watch if you were like a viewer. And also, like, it's weird because there's like all the different, like there's like Susie, and there's Residents of Evil, and there's me, and Biohazard Classified, there's you. Like everybody in the Resident Evil space, content creation wise, they all kind of have their own flavor. Like Susie does like really polished retrospectives, and then ROE, they go crazy with like the news and like live streams and all that stuff, and it's like a party over there. And I'm more of like a lore nerd. I'd like to, the story and behind the scenes and all that. So like that's why it's I guess it works, and we don't step on each other's toes. You just have to like keep that in mind, because when I started, it wasn't as crazy like competitive as it is now, but if you're going to get into it, you have to keep all that in mind, I think. I mean, for me, I would say I was kind of starting with news, because there wasn't that many. Like Residents of Evil was always doing like very sporadic, like very like when it was big news, right? Like as well as you as well, like when it's something big. But there wasn't that many people that were doing like smaller news. So I was like, okay, well, here's a gap in the market.
I'm definitely going to do that. But now there's so many people that are all doing that. And I guess that's another point, right? Is that it's definitely, you never want to copy somebody else, right? Because there are some ripoffs where people just copy somebody else, and then it just feels like I'm watching the same person. Like they're, oh, this person's talking about rumors and leaks, and it's like, oh, this person's talking about, and it's nobody's doing different stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like, and you know what? Kind of segueing into that, what was your thoughts on all of the bogus leaks, like the lame leaks that released before Resident Evil 4 remake?
Not even just then, like even now with all the Resident Evil 9 leaks, like you guys, as a Resident Evil fan to Resident Evil fans, don't listen to any of it because like 99% of it is like BS. And I don't click on any of those videos because I don't even want to reward like the creators or whatever, because it's all clickbait. They're trying to get you, like, if people know stuff, like, trust me, it'll be all over the internet. When gaming news articles and like IGN or whatever, like when those start talking about rumors, that's when you like listen. But when they're just random people on Twitter or YouTube, like just don't even.
Well, you know what? I had speaking of people that were believing rumors, because every time I talk about leaks, it's always when I'm just destroying them. Because I'm like, dude, this is not real. That's the only time, and it's very rare. Like I never talk about leaks unless there's some legitimacy, which is like very like almost every once like in a you know in a blue moon. Like for example, the data breach that happened in 2020. With Capcom's data breach, like that was the only one where you can kind of take some of the stuff with, you know, with more than just a grain of salt, which I can't stand when these leakers are always saying this. But speaking of which, I actually just had somebody comment something really weird where they were like, someone commented, dude, you must not pay attention to the news. Capcom said a month ago they are remaking RE1. And I was like, nah, dude. Like
that was an April Fool's joke. Oh
I was
God.
like, I was like, nah, dude. They never stated that. Where'd you get that false info? And you know what? I didn't know where he got that, but now you're just reminding me of that April Fool's joke from Andy's graphic designer. I'm pretty sure, right? Was it him? I think it was him. Yeah. Anyways,
no, I shared that on Instagram, and people were like angry at me because they totally believed it. It was like, it was just a joke.
Yeah. And I guess that's another thing, right? There were so many people that got so upset at this. But it's interesting. This guy basically continued by saying, dude, it's been known for months since they leak. Don't tell me you're one of those guys that's waiting for an official announcement. You know how I know it's true? Because Capcom will remake OG RE1 before Dino Crisis. And I was like, bro, don't tell me you're one of those guys that just believes every leak. Like, what? And unfortunately, there are viewers that do catch up with the clickbait. They do catch up by, you know, keeping in line. And, you know, sometimes I get some of those viewers coming into my videos and they get upset at me when I destroy a leak or when I'm like, no, this is complete, utter nonsense. Like, you should not be believing any leaks, taking them with any grain of salt. Like, just no, throw the salt out of here. So, I mean, that's been a problem that I think I noticed it happening. This was even before I started my channel with like Village, Resident Evil Village. Noticed there was some, I think Andy covered one leak that was true regarding like the lichens, but I think when RE4 started happening, I think that's when it was crazy. Like these guys were getting hundreds of thousands, like just random people that were just posting. Well, yeah, what's your thought on clickbait as well? And that's something that I have to commend you on as well, is that I love the fact that you never clickbait. Which I'm also like that. If I ever clickbait, let me know, guys. Let me know, right? Because sometimes I do, like, for example, I'll change a title to be more true to the thing, right? Because sometimes, obviously, with YouTube, it kind of gets a little iffy because you don't want to show all of your cards, right? You don't want to tell everybody about the exact 100% about what the video is going to be about. But even then, like, obviously, I don't intentionally try to trick people. I always say what's on there. But yeah, what's your thoughts on clickbait and all of that?
Well, I understand that, you know, Resident Evil is a niche. It's a pretty big niche now, but it's still a relatively small group of people. So I like to put stuff in the thumbnail that Resident Evil fans will especially be like, ooh, and then they want to watch the video. And I'm very adamant about not clickbaiting. I care a lot about my viewers, and, you know, I think they appreciate that. Like, if you guys knew how many times Raid Shadow Legends has tried to sponsor me, like, they've offered me so much money, and I'm just like, I can't do it. I'm sorry. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
But that's also why I don't cover rumors or news. As like, I do everything I can to avoid it because of the comments that you were just talking about, and I don't have the patience or energy to deal with that. And, you know, people get so crazy, and
unless I know for a fact
Yeah.
something is happening, I will not talk about it.
Yeah.
Because also I found out Capcom hates when people are talking about rumors. Like, they hate it.
Oh, I see. Have they talked to you about that, or you just know
Well,
from what they've stated?
I guess I can talk about this because it happened publicly, but when the Capcom Creators Program came out,
Yeah.
I was approved. Residents of Evil was not. Biohazard Classified was not.
Yeah,
And
that
like
was.
all these other people, and I was like, "What do you like? They're bigger channels than I am. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on?"
I was approved,
And
and I'm
yeah,
small.
well, I don't know, like, but basically what it came down to was like, I think someone at Capcom like ended up kind of in a roundabout way telling them like, we don't deal with channels who are speculative or talking about
Oh.
things that we have not confirmed, which
Yeah.
I've never done. So I was
Yeah.
like,
Me neither. Yeah, I
yeah,
guess
but
that's why I
then
got
they
approved.
almost
Yeah.
kicked me out too. So like, they're just, I guess, very picky.
They did? Wait, you almost got kicked out? What happened?
Oh, because I have OnlyFans.
Oh, really? They don't allow that. Oh, interesting. I see.
Well, because like also like I've done like sexy Leon cosplays and stuff on my Instagram, and they told me like
Oh,
you have to take your link to Instagram down, and like they gave me this list of
I see.
rules, and I was just like, okay, but it's really not that big of a deal. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but that's interesting. Yeah, you know what? I think Residents of Evil just got accepted recently. I remember like a couple months ago. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, JJ showed up, and I actually said, "Hi, JJ, what's up?" Because that was, yeah, I was like, dude, like, yeah, Residents of Evil. I always assumed that those bigger channels would get in because I know that, for example, Susie's there, you're there, but Andy, I think Andy wasn't a part of it because I don't think he's not American. He lives in the UK, right? So there's no Capcom
yeah,
Europe. There's a Capcom Creators Latin America, I'm pretty sure, but yeah,
I
yeah,
think it was just because it was a new program. Maybe they were very strict on the rules out the
yeah,
gate, and then maybe they kind of rolled things back and realized like,
mm,
oh, maybe we need to calm down a little bit.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
mean, it's really chill now. Like, it's literally
yeah,
just a Discord server at this point. So
yeah, yeah. But I guess when you joined, how big was it? Like, because now I think there's like almost 1,000 members, but back when I
yeah,
joined,
no,
I
when
think it
I
was like,
joined, there was like maybe like 200 people
yeah,
max.
yeah. I think it was 400 when I joined. Yeah, I joined last year though, so not last year around like I think May. But that's interesting though. That's interesting. I never thought. You know what? There was also when I joined, there was somebody else that also joined that was more of a leak person. So I guess yeah, they definitely
Mm.
toned down on that aspect. But that's interesting. I had no idea. But I guess moving on. Um, yeah, I guess moving on. I guess we'll move on to the game developer section of this podcast. Since you're a game developer, I definitely want to know your history with game development. Obviously, you did kind of mention at the start that you were getting into it because your love of games and the 3D aspect of it being so realistic. So, what kind of made you decide? Obviously, you did mention too that when you came back from Japan, you were like, "Oh, no, I gotta get a work. I gotta work to to pay back my friend." Is that when it kind of started that you were like, "Okay, let's go study"? Game development at uni or no?
No, it started like literally from the moment I started playing PlayStation.
I see.
Specifically, I remember the opening cinematic to Resident Evil 2 like changed
Yeah.
my life. Like, it's one of those things like when you hear about people who collect rocks or have like weird obsessions with stuff. That was me with 3D graphics. I would just sit there and I would watch the cutscenes over and over, and I was just like, it was like magic. I was like, how are they doing this? Oh my god, I never thought I'd be able to do 3D graphics one day. Like, it was just like telling someone you want to be an astronaut, or they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you want to make video games, like whatever. But I just like Tomb Raider, like all the, especially the pre-rendered FMVs were just amazing, and I always wanted to do that. And I guess I also didn't realize I was like studying game design when I would play games, because I would try to figure out like, I was always like, why is this key there? And I was like, oh, because they have to go around this way, because if you went this way, this would happen. And, that's how my brain like works. So that's what I ended up going to school for, because I needed a degree to get a visa in Japan. And I was like, I'm not
Oh,
going to
I
go to
see.
school for something that I
Yeah.
don't want to learn. And I was like, I'm going to go for game development. And I ended up getting my degree in video game art and design. And it was specifically because I wanted to do stuff like that, but it was really just to get like my visa. So
Yeah.
even though I got that degree, I didn't actually start developing video games until like, well, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. And even then, it's kind of just been a lot of projects that never got finished because, you know, I'm so scatterbrained.
Yeah, I see. And kind of going along with that, have you ever worked at like a company, or was it always like I'm going to do independent
Mm.
work as well?
I just like, especially with all the stuff I'm sure you've heard as a gamer in the
Yeah.
news, I don't trust companies. They
Yeah.
tend to ruin things, and I never want to be working on a video game and have to answer to someone else telling me to change stuff or edit this
Yeah.
or do that. And I was just like, I refuse. So also, when you're making a game by yourself, you get 100% of the profit and you have
Yeah.
100% of the control. So like, that's
Yeah.
just my vibe.
You know, I was just seeing yesterday. Yesterday, I was watching a short from Pirate Software. If you guys don't know Pirate Software, he blew up. I think last year he was everywhere on YouTube. So you know, if you missed him, I would actually be like, "Dang, that's crazy." But he's popping everywhere. Basically, he's a game developer, indie game developer. He's got a really cool backstory. But he was basically talking about how when he started working at Blizzard, he was only getting paid like $10.50. I don't know how long ago this was because it was just like a quick YouTube short of him talking, but it was very low for somebody that was working. His point was is that he was working at one of the biggest game companies of like the whole world, right? Like Blizzard. Blizzard's huge, right? So is that very common? Is that another reason you were like, I'm definitely not going to be working there at those kind of companies where it's like they're like and he was basically mentioning that it was very unfair that they pay them like they pay their workers so badly. I think he said that he was in the night crew. He was getting paid only $10.50, and when he became day crew, they actually took away the 50 cents. So yeah, I kind of wanted to hear your perspective on that. What is that very common in the gaming industry, where it's like very low wages?
Yeah, because basically what they will tell you, because first of all, it's cutthroat competitive. Everybody wants to work for, especially the bigger companies,
Mm,
which is so sad because they have that nostalgia and that attachment to them, and then it's like ruined when they actually do get jobs there.
yeah, yeah,
But basically, the angle that you will get is you're gonna get minimum wage. Would you rather be flipping burgers or making video games? You know, and then
mm,
people, of course, are gonna be like, "Fine, I'll do it." You know, and you can work your way up, but just like every other job, like good luck trying to make an impression. You're just another, you know, like cog in the machine or
yeah,
whatever. And, you know, that's another reason I didn't want to work for a company is because like I feel like you're not really valued.
yeah,
And like, for example, a lot of games, like you are very, very specialized. So let's say you're a prop artist and there's a team of like 50 prop artists that are just making like random objects that are in game. So like you could be the guy who makes all the chairs in a game, and that's literally all you do. You just make chairs,
yeah.
and you know that's not really fulfilling or exciting. I mean, you can do it. I would personally love that. I'd love to just sit there and make chairs, be the easiest job in the world. But you know, it's different. Everyone wants to be like a character artist, but that's probably the most competitive field and also the most unhappy because apparently once you know how to make characters, it's just like the same thing over and over and over
Mm,
because humans are humans, you know, like they
yeah,
have
yeah.
slight variations, but for the most part, they're just humans.
So I guess creatively, it doesn't really scratch that itch, right? You can't really push, and video game design would be a very creative field. It's very artistic, so you would definitely want to kind of push yourself at all times, right? Like, oh, I learned how to make a chair. Let's make something else. Let's make a table. Let's do this, right? I guess that's how it would work, right? With anything, or really just with like art or any other arts, but that's very interesting. And I guess that kind of leads me to my other question too, is that I've actually noticed just as a gamer, because I'm not a video game dev, I've just recently started kind of voice acting because I am an actor, but just starting voice acting in like indie games. But it kind of my question pertains to indie games. How is like as a gamer, I've noticed that indie games have been getting more and more popular, and especially when you have content creators like Pirate Software, who's kind of incentivized, kind of encouraging, like guys, go make your game, go make that. And you have the tools now are so easy with Unreal, with Blender, with others, other stuff like that. What's your perspective on why that's happening? Is it because AAA games are kind of failing? Like there's been so many like massive layoffs, en masse that's been happening where just people have just whole production studios have just shut down, right? Like what's your
Yeah.
perspective on that from a game dev perspective?
Well, it's a very simple answer. It's people are just bored with the AAA stuff, and indie games are interesting and innovative and fun and unique. And also, you know that when you're playing an indie game, it was made by, you know, either one person or a small group of people, and it makes it very special because what happens is it's like too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing, where like all these different people interacting with something ends up making something that's not really that great, or they're trying to please too many people. Whereas an indie game is usually, it's like, this may not be for you, but if it is for you, you're gonna love it. And it could be anything from like something that's like nostalgic, or just something that's really out there. And I don't know, it's kind of that's what makes it so interesting. Like, I love indie games. That's probably what I play most of these days, is because, you know, like, I feel like AAA titles are all the same now. Like, same control scheme, same menu, same UI, characters all look the same, environments, like, it just all looks and feels the same, and people are so over it. And if you want proof of that, go look at the comments for when you see a game trailer. Look at the comments for a AAA game trailer and look at the comments for an indie game trailer, and it is night and day. When there's a AAA game, everyone is just like, boo, like, no, and they'll find some tiny little thing to hate on. But when it's an indie game, people are so kind, supportive, and it's like, it's crazy. I mean, it's a complete like yin yang.
Yeah, and I guess that was something else that you mentioned too, right? You said there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and you were mentioning before how sometimes, like, for example, like higher ups in the company, if you were to work at a studio, they'd be like, "Oh no, I want you to change that. I want you to get out." And I've also heard from some video game developers that sometimes CEO they change the game up. So they're like, "Oh no, we want like a microtransaction game," and then they're like, "Oh no, that's not working. Let's switch." Like, for example, it kind of reminds me of BioWare. Like, for example, Dragon Age, the Veilguard is releasing late in the fall, but that game has been in development kind of hell for like 7 years, where at first the CEOs of BioWare wanted them to make a multiplayer game because they tried to do that with Anthem, but since that failed, they were like, oh no, let's scrap that. Let's go back to single player. And it's like, I guess that kind of adds to what you were saying, right? I mean, the CEOs kind of getting involved, or higher ups just getting involved. Yeah, is that why you're always like, no, I'm not gonna go for that?
Well, because the thing is, like, a lot of the CEOs and the executives, they're focused on the money, and they're not even gamers, so they don't even understand what they're asking. So I can give you an example of this. This is actually the first sort of peek behind the curtain that I got that made me go like, ugh. One of my professors, he was actually my main professor for my game design classes. His name's Steve Swink. He's pretty well known amongst like the AAA community because he's an excellent game designer. He wrote a book called Game Feel that is like the guide for like game design as far as like making something fun and all that. But he worked on the Tony Hawk games back in the day.
Oh, wow.
And obviously the Tony Hawk games were great, but a lot of people don't remember. People did not like the third Tony Hawk game. That was like kind of like the black sheep or whatever. And he told us what happened there. I don't know if he told us this story, so I'm sure I can tell it, but he said like the executives kept coming in and they were like forcing them to like do like the thing where you could grab onto the back of cars or get off your skateboard and run around or whatever the stuff that wasn't related to skateboarding. They just kept telling them like, that's going to be the focus. People are going to love that. And he kept trying to tell them like, they're not going to like that. They want skateboarding. It's a skateboarding game.
Yeah.
And then the number one complaint when all the reviews came out was all the stuff he was telling them they were not going to like. And he was right. And that's just like a small example. You know, there's countless examples of that happening in AAA space, and not just games, movies, everything. Yeah,
I was just going to mention, I think the same thing goes with producers, executive producers getting in the way, where I think personally, I think the reason they get involved is because they want something to be like, oh yeah, you know, that idea, that was me. That came from me, even though they have no knowledge, they're not gamers, they're not nothing. Kind of reminds me of a story that, I think what's his name? Kevin Smith. I think he was supposed to, the comic book guy that was like in Jay and Silent Bob, like the Clerks guy, that he's kind of chubby. He apparently, I heard a story, Hollywood story, basically saying that he was actually in talks to direct the new Superman movie. And he was going to do it, but there was a huge issue with the script where the producer had him come over and the producer's like, no, I want you to add a metal spider. And he was like, being a comic book nerd, he was like, why would Superman, like, why would we give time to Superman fighting a stupid metal spider? Like, that's not going to work. Like, Superman is so strong. You can just, like, you know, blow in that thing, just blow a puff of air and it's going to be destroyed. And the guy was just really incessant. He didn't want him. He basically was like not going to give the go for the movie unless he did this dumb idea. Sure enough, he said, no, I'm not going to do that Superman movie because of that. And sure enough, the next year, or that like 2 years or whatever after, he saw the movie Wild Wild West in theaters, and sure enough, there was a really weird. That movie was really weird. I'm just gonna say that right away.
It was weird.
But sure enough, at the end, there was a big mechanical spider, and he was like, "Oh, this is that producer again." So, kind of like in the same way, I guess that what you were mentioning with their teacher working on the Tony Hawk game and him adding like grabbing onto vehicles, which I guess maybe is like a Back to the Future kind of reference or something like that, right? But yeah, stuff like that. So I guess that's very similar, right? Like as you were mentioning, it happens in movies, happens in games. But dang, like that's rough. And the other thing too that you mentioned too was regarding games being similar and every game being the same thing. I guess one game that kind of just I thought of right away was Helldivers 2. I don't know if you've played Helldivers 2, but it started getting really popular, and then there was having some, drama and stuff. But I remember Helldivers, when I played it, I was like, dude, this feels exactly like Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. Like all of the movements was the same, how the character was moving. And so I guess my question is that very common? I mean, from when you're playing a game, like I'm a gamer, so I don't really notice all of those details. But is that very common where I guess if something's trending, other studios just copy the same exact formula and do that? Is that common?
So, just as an example, first of all,
Yeah.
yes. Think of Stardew Valley. Amazing game,
Yeah.
fantastic game. There are so many AAA, indie, whatever farming sims that have tried to copy it, and all of them just they cannot compete with it. And some of them are like millions of dollars. Like there's like the Disney one and all that, which is now riddled with microtransactions and all that stuff. And people just like everyone just tried to. They do that a lot where something is successful and then everybody tries to copy it instead of doing their own thing. And it's very frustrating for me to watch because like I know that there's so many people out there with their own original ideas, but instead of going with those, they're like, oh, let's go chase like a quick buck. And
just to play it safe.
Not,
Yeah. And I guess that doesn't breed creativity, right? So I guess even the video game developers that are working on those games, newer games that are going to be releasing, and they're having their higher ups saying, work on this game, make it exactly like this, because that's working right now. I guess for them, I guess it must be kind of like hell because they're like, well, I wanted to do something better. I wanted to do something different. I wanted like we had a great idea here, but I guess that all got scrapped, kind of like what happened with BioWare, right? But yeah, I guess that kind of answers the whole thing as to why indie games are just rising in popularity. And that's a question I had too. Was Stardew Valley an indie game as well?
It was made by one person,
Wow.
which is like not,
I did not
a
know
common
that.
thing
Yeah.
for that level of success. It took him 4 years and like it almost killed him. But it's one of the most beautiful games I have ever played in my life. Like that game will consume you if you like play it, but in the best way. Like all your stress will be gone. And like there's even one guy who quit his corporate job and bought a farm in the middle of nowhere and actually like Stardew Valley in real life. It's crazy.
I see.
Like,
So like Harvest Moon or like Story of Seasons. Yeah, like cozy games, right?
So another example, going further than just making the game, he recently was going viral again because he's been releasing updates for that game for so long now and all for free. And he said, I vow I will never charge for DLC ever, like because I just want the game to be good. And the game's only $15. He could have charged $50. I would have bought every DLC he released. I would have supported the game. I've bought it multiple times just to support it, because I love it so much. But like that's the indie spirit right there. It's making games for the love of games, not for like trying to make money. Because if you make a good game, the money will come. Don't worry about that. Like
and you know what, that is becoming a trend where indie game companies are saying we're not going to charge you for DLC. And I guess that kind of what's ironic about that is that it kind of brings us back to like PS2 days, right? Like where there was no DLC. Like you bought the game, you put it in, there was no updates. That was it. That was the finished product. And I guess what's your thoughts on how old school was like you just got the game, put it in the disc and it worked immediately, as opposed to now where you have to do like a whole patch download. They're still like working on the game. It's still unfinished, or like, what's your thoughts on that?
No, I hate it. Like, because what it does is it enables lazy game dev where they'll just like like, okay, it's not done yet, but we'll just ship it, and then like early access and that whole thing.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, back in the day, you just put in the disc and that was it. There was no updates, there was no nothing. And unfortunately, sometimes that was a bad thing because sometimes games had like really bad bugs or something.
Yeah.
But that's the way it was. And you know, game companies would release newly printed discs that were updated, but they wouldn't like tell people. You know, that's often what happened with like greatest hits.
Yeah.
A lot of like greatest hits games were actually newer versions of the game that were slightly different. And I know that because Game Shark would not work on both versions.
Oh, and Game Shark, yeah, Game Shark was that like a cheat engine or something like that? I see. Yeah.
I was a big cheater back in the day because I wasn't very good at video games, but I wanted to like get through them. So just like infinite health, infinite ammo, and all that. But it kind of ruined games for a while. But and interestingly, the reason that those aren't a thing anymore, like cheats in general aren't a thing, is because of trophies and achievements.
Yeah,
it's a whole thing I could get into.
Yeah,
like
And
anyway.
and I guess another company too, where I think we're also seeing companies that are almost like they're huge, but they're indie. Like it kind of reminds me of like you were mentioning the no DLC thing. It kind of reminds me of Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 is, I think, indie. Like they're technically indie because they just have private investors, but they have so many branches and studios.
To prove I'm not talking out of my ass, everybody was talking about Baldur's Gate 3 to the point that I started having really bad like FOMO, and I was like, well, everyone says this game's amazing. I want to try it, but I'm a stickler for physical media. So
you bought the digital deluxe? My friend just got it.
Just a couple days ago.
Yeah,
this arrived.
Dude. Nice.
I haven't opened it yet because my backlog just will not end. But
I see. Have you played it?
You have to order it through their site.
I see. Yeah, my friend, and you know what? There was a delay, so you just got it now. That's probably because of that, right? My friend just got it like a couple weeks ago. She came with the poster, came with a bunch of stickers, really cool stuff actually. Soundtrack, really, it's a really cool collector's edition.
All. I know nothing. I just know that the game, like when so many people are saying a game is good, you have to like check it out. So I just went on the faith of the internet, and I'm like, okay, all you guys love it, I'll check it out. So I have not played it at all. I haven't watched videos about it. I don't know anything. I just know. I think I've seen some screenshots where people are not wearing very much, and it's like leather, and I'm like, okay.
I got the platinum in the game came out in September, I believe. I got it early. I pre-ordered it like day before. I'm like, no, I think I got a good feeling about this game. I never pre-order games, so it was technically like a day before because I wanted to play it early, and no, I got it in I think 3 months. Yeah, 3 months. I got the platinum for that game. Played it 6 times, 7 times.
There's no online trophies, is there?
No, it's not online. No, it's you
I'm
can play
a
with friends.
Trophy horror, so when there's a platinum trophy that's like fun to get, I'm like, bring it on.
Dude, if you ever stream that, I'd be happy to join if you want. I'm also on PlayStation, dude. If you want like an OP bard or an OP
you can guide me through because I'm gonna start the game. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Because it's actually hard. It's a hard game. I played it on like the hardest, where they actually added like an honor mode, so basically permadeath. I played it on that and just recently did that in January, I think, or February of this year. Yeah, so they released it after, but yeah. Anyways, if you want,
I don't even know what genre it is like, but I'm all for it. So
cool. Well, but that's cool. But I guess kind of segueing into, we're talking about all this indie stuff. You're also working on a new game, right? I was actually seeing the trailer for Psycho Dive, and I wanted to try out the demo because it wasn't on Steam, right? I think I saw it on your website.
I couldn't figure out how to get it on Steam.
Yeah.
You guys don't know, uploading to Steam is a nightmare. Like, it's not like click upload. It's like you have to go through all these crazy menus and weird things you have to download on your computer, and it's just like a black thing with all these white numbers, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell is going on, so I'm gonna have to ask someone to help me. But that's why it's not on Steam, because I'm stupid. Sorry.
I see. Yeah,
but it's on itch.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's what I was saying, right? I definitely want to try out the demo, so I'm definitely going to do that. But dude, when I was watching the trailer, I kind of got some Parasite Eve 2 vibes from it. Especially with the mental powers and stuff. Like, I know Parasite Eve, you can do like fire and stuff, or like, psychic abilities. And I wanted to see that. What was the inspiration for that? What's this game about for viewers that aren't aware of it?
So it is a Resident Evil inspired game, like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Parasite Eve, all of those like fixed camera, whatever. but it is about a guy named Lennox who is what are called psychodivers. But basically, it's a psychic that is able to literally go into people's minds, and he does it to get information or help people or whatever. And you end up going through 4 or 5 different characters' minds, and each one's like a different level, and they're all sort of themed. So, for example, this is how the game starts out. He's on a flight as a passenger, like in real life, and he sees the pilot like yelling at the flight attendant and sort of like just something's not right, and he has to touch people to dive into their mind. So he touches the pilot, it goes into his mind. You finish the level, and during the level, you find out that the pilot is actually planning to crash the plane and kill everybody on board. So he has to stop him, ends up going to jail, and then like all this other stuff happens. But you also go into the mind of a supermodel who's like really famous, but she's like struggling with all like the eating disorders and the pressure and all of that stuff. And you go into the mind of a woman who has regressed into like basically she's so traumatized from being an adult that she just wants to believe that she is still a child, to the point that it's like a problem.
Yeah.
And then the last level, you go into the mind of like a deranged dentist who is just a full-on psycho, and that's going to be like horror, like Silent Hill, gruesome, to the point I'm worried that I might be doing too much. Like people aren't going to be able to handle what I'm putting in those levels, because it's a little like, I mean, a publisher would never agree to it, but again, that's what I was talking about earlier. Is it's my game, you know. I don't know how people are going to react to it, but it's going to be very horrific, and then the ending will happen, and then oh my god, but it's so much work.
And how long have you that by the way, that seems like a great plot. If any, it kind of gives me like Professor Xavier vibes, where he kind of, you know, or I think also like I was just watching Deadpool recently. I think his sister, right, like she gets into people's minds by touching them. So it's kind of like that. Obviously, your game was working. You were working on the game before, but that's really cool. And how long have you been working on this game? How long has that process been?
It was supposed to just be like a short project, but I've been working on it for like almost a year now.
Nice.
And I just want to be done with it. Like I love it and everything, but I want to make so many other games, and you know, and then there's always like every time I make a new level, there's all sorts of new bugs, and then I have to like talk to like a programmer buddy to help me, and it's just like
It's very tedious, right? I mean, that's my understanding with game devs, with programming and all that stuff, right? It gets a little hard, and right, but I guess we were kind of mentioning this before, or I mentioned it with new programs to work on games. Are you using Unreal? Are you using Blender? What type of software are you using to make the game?
I do all my graphics in Blender, and then I primarily work in Unreal Engine because I'm not a programmer. I'm not good with code, but Unreal Engine has a blueprint system, is what they call it, and basically you connect nodes to do the programming. So like, you know, when the player connects to this, like this will happen, and it's something that visually is a lot easier to understand. It's literally Unreal Engine or R.P.D Maker. Those are like my 2 engines of choice right now.
Nice.
And so I've been using Unreal Engine for like 4 years, and I'm still learning. But if you stick with it, like just pick a game engine and stick with it, and you can totally like learn if you keep doing tutorials and just making stuff.
Yeah. And you know what? I think you just posted a video that was very interesting. You just posted a video where you were finding details, but details like within like game like the game's like, you know, I guess items and stuff, which was really, I didn't finish it.
I was obsessed. Like
no, that was cool. And we were kind of talking before about how it's very interesting, especially as a content creator, to have different spice, right? Different things but that's a perfect example of something that nobody else in the space, like everybody right now, like I'm pretty sure there's no other Resident Evil YouTuber that's a game dev, right? And I'm pretty sure, I think what you did is something that I couldn't do that. Like Residents of Evil wouldn't be able to do that unless they had help, you know, outside help. But that was a very cool video. I still have to finish it. It's a pretty big one. I was watching it yesterday. I'm like, dude, this is so cool, seeing all like the Joni's arms. If you guys haven't watched that, go check it out, definitely. But what I was going to mention about that was that I was seeing you work with Blender, and you definitely looked like you had a handle of that. You were like going over, you're like, oh, what's this? Let's look at this. And you were like, I was like, what's going on here, dude? Like, this is like to be able to have that knowledge with a program. You can tell you've put in hours, right? So that was cool to see.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
cool to see, because that was
Oh, no,
I've never.
I love Blender.
Yeah, I've never had experience with anything like that, but it's very cool to see you kind of going into the game and taking
And
screenshots.
if any of your viewers want to learn how to use Blender or do 3D art, I actually have a tutorial channel with
Yeah.
3 introductory videos to Blender. It's like 30 minutes of your time, and you will learn everything you need to know how to use that program. So it's a good way to get started.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that. Yeah, that's really cool. But yeah, so, and I guess with Psycho Dive, yeah, when are you projecting to release that, or is it still like you're like, because you mentioned there was like 5 levels to the game, right? Like how, like, obviously I don't want you to spoil anything, but like, are you projecting a next year release, or end of the year, or
I
it's very
wish I could say, but
Yeah.
I have learned not to assume
Yeah.
I'm going to be done with something
Yeah.
in time.
Yeah.
It depends on. So first, I have to get the game completely finished. I'm currently working on the 3rd level or the 4th level.
No.
Oh God, I don't even know. But after that is one more level, and then I have to start. Basically the way it works is you put, like, I already have the story and the characters and all that stuff, and then you start assembling the level like Legos after making the assets that you need.
Yeah.
And then you have to play test, and then you put the enemies and the key items, and then you play test again, and then like once everything works and you're good, then you start adding the cutscenes and the sounds, and that's like, it takes so much time.
Yeah.
But
It's like post production, right? You're doing everything at the end, right? After you've made everything in the building blocks. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm doing everything by myself. Like, I don't know what is wrong with me, but I want to start my own game studio. And if this game does well and makes enough money, I think it'll give me the opportunity to do that. And then I can hire people to help me so I don't have to kill myself.
Yeah.
As far as release, I'm hoping next year. If it doesn't come out by next year, I think I'm just going to, like, I don't know. I'm just going to throw myself in the garbage.
I see, but no, that's really exciting. I'm actually really hyped to try. I'll definitely try out your demo and stream it as well, because dude, I'm actually hyped. That sounds like such a cool plot. And as mentioned, it was giving me Parasite Eve 2 vibes. Obviously there is that RE component, but even Parasite Eve 2, I guess, is what I really wanted to say, because I don't know, Parasite Eve 2 was like Resident Evil, but you had cool powers, right? Cool stuff like that. And yeah, no, it definitely gave me that vibe. So
it's interesting I say that, because one of the main inspirations was actually, I had just tried out the game Galarians. I don't know if you know about that.
No.
It's a PS1 game that is like Resident Evil, like fixed camera and pre-rendered backgrounds and all that.
No.
But it's interesting. It's the opposite of Resident Evil, where you're playing as the test subject and you're killing all the scientists and stuff, trying to get out with like your psychic powers.
Dang.
It's worth a play. It was actually a lot better than I thought it was. I haven't finished it because I only had disc 1, and then like I wasn't able to continue. Also, I got lost a lot because it was confusing. So play it with a guide.
Yeah.
But it just like psychic blast. Although the way they did the mechanics, I really didn't like as a game designer. So I did like my own thing. But also the demo is like an old build, and what I have now is better. Even the trailer wasn't actually a functioning game. It's just I needed to get into a competition, and they're like, "Do you have a trailer?" So I just threw a bunch of assets and made it look like a game, but it wasn't like.
Well, it definitely fooled me. It definitely as a gamer, I didn't know. But yeah, it was good. And by the way, speaking of your game too, I was gonna ask: you said the main character's name is Lennox, right? I was gonna ask, is that you? Because it looked kind of like you in PS4.
A lot of people think that it's based off me, but it's
Yeah.
not. He's actually inspired by. If you ever saw Daria, the TV show,
No.
there's a character there named Trent, and that's where the inspiration came from. Although I do play the voice, it's not me.
I see.
And fun fact for Resident Evil fans, his name was inspired by Cindy Lennox from Resident Evil Outbreak.
Yeah, I actually just recently spoke with the voice actor recently, Michelle Ruff, who did Outbreak File 2, Cindy Lennox. But yeah, really cool. It was such a long time ago. I was asking her about it, but she was like, I don't really remember, but she was super nice.
Like,
super nice.
We need to get all the information from everyone involved in Outbreak before it's all gone, because there's a lot that was cut out of the Outbreak games.
Yeah. No, but yeah, she was super nice, and she ended up playing Jill in Revelations as well. but super hyped. Anyways, guys, we're going to move on to the Resident Evil discussion. We're going to move on to that. But before we do, let's catch up to some chats, and then we'll continue. Let's see. Yeah, we missed a lot. My bad, guys. My bad. Sheesh. Okay, one sec. We'll read. We'll try to get to everyone, right? If we can't, we'll continue. It says, Raccoon City Pizza, what type of flavor Domino pizza do you have? Oh, no, okay. I have raccoon flavor. Let's see. Sounds good. Does it... Oh, wait. Is that where we started? Yes. Zom says, I think we need a RE0 remake on the new RE engine. I missed the Arclay Mountain storyline since I was introduced there with RE1. Yeah, what do you think about that, Ink Ribbon? I definitely think so. I think that's the weakest my game, like the weakest RE game for me.
Yeah, that's how I feel about remakes. There's a lot of games getting remakes that don't need them, and there's a lot of games that need remakes that aren't getting them.
Yeah.
And that's where you can fix all the problems and make it what it was supposed to be. And I think Zero falls under that category.
Yeah. I miss Where's Barry and the Crimson Army. Zoms represent. Hey, Americana Ninja, thank you so much for stopping by. Oh, I see. Are those RE channels? I see. Yeah, I wouldn't know, but I'm just thinking. I think that's what they were mentioning, right? Where's Barry, Crimson Army? I think when we were talking about some RE creators that are no longer doing content, right? He was a big during RE7. Yeah, okay. So he was big during RE7's release with theories and stuff. Our Raccoon City Pizza says, I've learned that made a good video if you want to watch it after countless of hours of editing or filming. That's a good point. Right? I mean, sometimes you just want the video to get out there. Sometimes you're like, dude, I need to finish this. Just I'm kind of done listening to my voice. Like I like hearing my voice, but sometimes I'm like, dude, I'm done. Oh man, the Crimson Heads was so scary in RE1 2002. Those things gave me nightmares when I was young. What's your thoughts on the Crimson Heads and how they never really returned, only in Orc, right? Like Operation Raccoon City. That's about it. Like they never brought them in the remakes. Never brought, what do you think about that? What was your thoughts?
I don't know. I like the Crimson Heads. They were a good surprise. Although once you know that they're there, like that's it. But
yeah.
I don't know. Capcom has a history of putting things in Resident Evil games that people love and then never bringing them back, whether it's characters, enemies, whatever. So who knows?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, every channel says Raccoon says, well, you all make unique content. Every channel between you two, Ro and Susie, all completely different content. Yeah, when you were mentioning that too, like for example, I could never make a retrospective because I actually don't like video essays. I can't stand them. So don't ever expect me. Don't ever expect me to do essays. Yeah. I guess maybe it has to do with me. We were talking about this with one of my viewers, and we were talking about like in school, I did not like essays, especially because I went to uni to study anthropology and stuff. So that was 12 essays like back to back all the time.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's why I'm like, bro, I don't even watch video essays like retrospect. I can't like I'm done. That's probably, but just don't ever expect that from me. Susie's got that, right? Yeah, let's see. Four Eyes mentions especially Dust Golem. Yeah, with I think, well, it's not just him, right? There's a bunch of other leakers that have said a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't just put all the blame on Dust Golem. So to be fair, Dust Golem has had some stuff true, but a lot of other stuff wrong too. So this is the thing.
The giveaway is AI generated thumbnail. Don't click on it.
Yeah. I use AI generated thumbnails sometimes, but yeah, that's only when I'm like talking about like a new game. Like for example, if I'm theorizing about something that's for example like Resident Evil 9, and I don't have, we don't have like, actual pictures of RE9 and stuff. So that's when I use definitely AI generation stuff. But yeah, not always. But yeah, there does seem to be a bunch of people that just use that, especially when it comes to leaks. Yeah. Only click on both of you. Yeah. Rock says, thank you. It says, thank you for not doing that, especially since I'm still somewhat new to RE. I think he's probably referring to clickbait, I'm assuming. Yeah, the Zom says the GTA community is the worst for clickbait. Yes, that was actually something that I wanted to discuss. We kind of touched a little bit with my previous guest, the professional, because he's actually done a bunch of videos talking about how just the clickbait for GTA 6 was insane, and how he's basically made videos basically like, don't believe the leaks and rumors. These are all just educated guesses, speculation from fans. These are not true. But that's the same case when it comes to Resident Evil, right? So Joda says, "Oh man, my phone didn't let me know, and I put notifications on. Rip. Oh, my bad, Joda. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. We're still here, so you still made it at the end." Americana Ninja says, "I will put an Easter egg on everything I made. LOL. Every chair is going to be marked." Yeah, actually, I don't. I think he's talking about the game development, right? Like how you were talking about, like you'd be happy making a chair. I don't think. I don't think game like studios would allow that, right? I don't think so, right? I don't know.
No, they've got very strict rules about what
Yeah.
you can and can't do. Like you
Yeah.
can get in a lot of trouble. Like people try to sneak in like Easter eggs or code, and like you can
Yeah.
get fired for it.
Yeah, thank you for letting me know, because yeah, that doesn't seem right. Boo, hey man, hey everyone, hey Demon, thank you so much for stopping by. Rock says RE4 remake chairs, lol. Americana Ninja says Inscription is an amazing card-based horror game. Oh, I never heard of that. Me too. Michael Garcia says, I just hate how changed too many things in video games. It's like, who are trying to appeal to? Yeah, where there's sometimes there's video games that have identity crisis. Like for example, I think in the previous Summer Games Fest, I was seeing this game called Marvel Rivals, and it was almost like a Spider-Man. Like it had like Marvel heroes like Venom, and I was like, but it kind of looked like Overwatch or like those types of games. But it's like, who's this game for? Like it looks very strange. Is it for like early preteens? And it's always weird when you have.
That's where I hear an executive being like, "Yeah, just make them beat each other up. The kids will love it." It's like you don't even know what you're talking about. Shut up.
Or like that. You know what other game too? Concord. I don't know if you saw that in the Summer Games Fest. It was like a weird game that's like Overwatch, or like what's the other one? There's another one, Overwatch.
Oh yeah. That's a good example. If you go to the comments, you see people just ripping it apart. Like,
yeah, where
they can't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's like a multiplayer game, but they have single player cutscenes, and it's like, what? Like, I don't know about you, but when you're playing multiplayer games, who cares about the characters in the like, it's good to have some exposition, like some story, like to their background, but it's like to have cutscenes where like one guy likes hot sauce, and it's like, okay, I don't really care about that. Like that looked like a game doomed to fail right from the get go, right? But yeah, and I'm also hearing right now too, Ubisoft with the Star Wars game. What was it called? Star Wars Outlaws. That's been getting a bunch of hate. I've been hearing a bunch of gamers that are like, this game is not good. This game is yeah, it has a lot of issues. But I mean, that's and yeah, I guess Ubisoft would definitely not be a company game developers would want to work for, right? That'd be iffy. I mean, when's the last time you enjoyed a Ubisoft game? I think hasn't been since like the first couple of Assassin's Creed games. Black Flag, I think.
Honestly, the only Ubisoft game I play is Just Dance.
Just
I love Just Dance. I don't care what anybody says. Like that game is so much fun.
Yeah. You know what? For me, my friend also loves Just Dance a lot. I will say, like the concept of it is great, but sometimes the choreography is a little, I don't know. I'm not too fond of the choreography, but I love how it gets people up and working out, right? So that's great.
Yeah, work out, learn some dance moves.
Yeah, they don't want people to be creative. More, Michael says. Yeah, okay, we're almost caught up. He says, I've enjoyed playing video games and unlocking things. That's what I miss about old video games. It's like magic. The magic's gone. Oh, like unlocking things? Like you mean like unlocking locked areas? I think that's what you mean. Gang stalking.
Like everything's DLC now. You used to just have that on the disc, and you'd
I see.
It's
probably yeah. I think that's what he's talking about. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. Yeah, Gang Stalking Clip says, "What's up, Project Wesker? Ink Ribbon is a legend. Thank you so much for stopping by, Gang Stalking Clips. Appreciate it." Demon says, "Oh, I'm liking the sound of your game, Ink Ribbon." Yeah, no, it looks very interesting. You. Rock says, "Link, please." Yeah, do you have a link to the thing or on your website? Right, they could find it, or where should I?
I'll send you a.
Yeah.
If you want to paste it.
Yeah, I'll do that.
This is my itch.io page. So if you want to find any of my games or whatever, you can find them there.
All right, I'll copy that.
I also made a Resident Evil coin pusher game that is free if you want to check it out.
Nice. Oh, I can't put it on Restream. I put it on YouTube. You know what? I could open Twitch as well. Let me know if you guys that are watching on Twitch, let me know if you guys can see it on Twitch. You should be able to. You know what? I'm on Twitch right now. I'll just put it on, just so everybody knows.
It's okay.
Let's see.
But yeah, itch.io, by the way, it's like YouTube, but with like indie games, and a lot of them are free and really cool. So like, if you ever just want to have a refreshing gamer experience, highly recommend. I've been trying to get them to sponsor me for like ever. And they don't
Nice.
care, but I care. I
Nice.
love
So
that site. I'm on there all the time.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, hopefully they do. That's weird. They haven't gone back to you at all? Dang.
No, and
Bro.
also they have fully uncensored adult games. So if that's your jam, there you go. I think it's like the only site that you can play those types of games, and
I see. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's
not
not
that I
allowed.
do, but
I see. Yeah, there was a very interesting horror game that was called, I don't remember what it was called. It was something called like Succubus or something like that. I don't know. It was something specific. And it looked interesting, but then it did say like, hey, has a bunch of nudity and a bunch of stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, I can't stream that then. But yeah, sometimes, I think they made a PG version or something, like a toned down version, but I guess that's the way to go, right? If you were to make those types of games, right? To put on Steam,
yeah.
to put on like GOG or whatever. I don't know how it works.
Well, yeah, because if you play it on itch, it'll be in its pure format. But once it goes to like the Switch or PlayStation, there's a bunch of rules that they have to follow. So a lot of stuff is going to get censored and cut out. So
I see. Yeah.
just so you guys know.
Yeah. Rock says I use Nomad Sculpt. Oh, is that a different engine as well?
That's a portable sculpting program
Nice.
for like iPad.
I see. Raccoon City says, I bet your game will be packed with small Easter eggs and details. Dude, that's a good question. Will it have some RE stuff or like, or obviously you can't.
Quite a few.
Oh, there is. Okay.
Nice. Yeah, I want to put more, but I have to get the game done, and then I'll go back and see what I can put in. One of the Easter eggs, I won't say where, but there's a secret area you can find where you can find me passed out under my computer. I was like, oh,
from working on the game.
Like,
yeah. Oh, Wild Kai showed up. Wild Kai appeared. Says, I wish we had 2 and 3 remake in the style of RE1 remake. That's actually a good segue. We're actually going to be switching over to Resident Evil, but yeah, what do you think about that? I mean, why did Capcom just stop at 1 back in 2002, right? Or 0, 1 and 0, I should state. Yeah.
To be fair, I think 1 really needed a remake because I started with 2, and then when I went to Resident Evil 1, I was like, ugh. Like, I don't really like this as much. Like, it just wasn't as polished because it was, still new or whatever. And then 1 was like the justice that it needed, and then they moved on. And then I guess since they had already made the engine, they were like, what if we make 0 like while we're here?
Yeah.
Which is why 0 is so sloppy, because they were just like, they just threw it together and were like, here you go, Resident Evil 0, whatever.
That's a good point. Yeah. So I mean, like, I guess you could also extrapolate that and say that if they did make 2 and 3 during the same time, would they have been sloppy as well? That's a good point. I never thought of that. That's a very that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't think those types of remakes would age as well as people think they would. Which, by the way, something I put in my game with my limited programming skills was the ability to switch at any time from fixed camera to third person. Like,
nice.
where the camera's like behind you, like Resident Evil 4. Why Capcom can't do that in all their money and skill, I don't know, but I was able to do it. So
yeah, well, they did do it as like an Easter egg in Lost in Nightmares for Resident Evil 5, but I mean, it's really hard. Like, there's no auto aim, so you basically have to get the laser to the person. But that was the only time that happened, right? Where you go to the doors, open up the dual doors, and you know how you in the OG you get attacked by the dog, but you do that I think 3 times, and I think you turn around and everything is fixed. That's something that I definitely want for a new Resident Evil, is to have, because you know what other game is doing that as well, is Metal Gear Solid Delta, Snake Eater.
Yeah,
they're doing that where they're having the same classic where you can see your your stance like that or far away, and then they're also having like Metal Gear Solid 5 where over the shoulder kind of locations. So, and I think they're also calling it, what are they calling it, classic or something like that? I don't know, classic and standard,
or like classic
modern.
And modern or whatever,
yeah,
which is fine. Like, that way everybody wins, everyone's happy. Why can't they just do that all the time for everything? I don't understand.
Yeah, but I see. So for you definitely would want, I mean, they have done a mod, right? Have you played that mod for the RE2 remake? They did like a fixed camera.
I haven't
What'd you think
played
of that?
it. I wanted to, but I've watched people play it, and like, it looks cool, but it looks like they really struggle when it comes to combat, because like trying to aim and all that. People have told me, like, when I've asked on people's streams, like, they said it's really difficult, and I'm like, well, there you go. But it makes sense because it's not meant to be played that way, you know. So
Yeah.
it's a little more complicated in that regard because of the over the shoulder aiming.
Yeah.
But if it was just like regular, like, you know,
Auto
I
aim or
mean, my
something,
game is
right?
very simple. So you shoot and the projectile goes, and that's it.
Yeah. Or just adding auto aim for when you're doing fixed camera angles, right? Doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like that as mentioned, that was the same issue that I ran into Lost in Nightmares with them doing that. But yeah. We'll catch up to some more chats. And Cribben, you said you were working with Blender stuff on YouTube. If you have a link to that, yeah. What's your channel, or what's your channel name for that specific?
It's
I think
literally just Ink Ribbon tutorials. Like,
yeah, yeah. So yeah, you could definitely look it up, Rock, for that. Gangs Talking Clip says, I'm curious as to what's going on with Tormented Souls 2. We haven't heard of the game in a long time since the first trailer. That's a very good point. And you know what? I actually do want to talk to the developers as well, because they're actually Chilean. I'm Chilean, so I definitely wanted to chat with them. But dude, have you played Tormented Souls, I imagine, right? Or what did you think of that?
Yeah, no, I was actually one of the first people like that they reached out to. They're like, hey, would you like play it on stream? And I struggled, but I played it. And
Yeah.
the answer of why it's taking so long is because they're a small indie
Yeah.
studio and there's just a couple people. And the fact that their first game looks that good, like it's just
Yeah.
going to take time because they don't have the resources of a AAA. Even though the game looks great, like it's still an indie game. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the downside, is indie development takes so much longer.
Yeah, because you don't have as many people, not as much. You know, you can't have a bunch of people working on little stuff that other people work on big. You know, you can't allocate resources when it's just one person, or you know, a small team of 5. But yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, speaking of Tormented Souls, they were so nice. P Cube actually reached out to me as well, and I had just reached 1,000 subscribers. Like I was like brand new. I think I just got monetized, and then they reached out and they're like, we're releasing it for the Nintendo Switch, but if you want to play it on other consoles, I was like, yes, thank you. But yeah, they were so kind. So yeah, definitely hyped for it.
Influencers and streamers, if you're making a game, it is gold marketing. Like there's pretty much no other marketing that's worth the money.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not just with video games too, but also with music as well, right? Like I don't know if you've seen on TikTok with, you know, so many musicians that are popping off because of reaching out to TikTokers to use your song in a video that they're making, and then that pops off, and then everyone's like, oh, what's that song? You know, so yeah, that's a very good point with social media marketing, right? And how it's definitely something that's worth a try, especially if you're an indie dev, you know. Yeah. Gangs Talking Clip says 100% agree with Ink. Fixed camera and third person as options would be the best for RE. Yep. Yeah. And you know what? I think it's interesting that they have third person, they have first person with VR. So it would be, you know, just a little bit more Capcom. We could get the fixed camera angle, you know, having all triple would be great. Let's see. Raccoon says, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Capcom already sort of working on Zero before RE1 remake? Could have sworn I saw PS1 look in Rebecca. Yeah, they were working on like Nintendo 64. I'm pretty sure, right? And then something happened where just the cartridge wasn't big enough, so I think they just shut that down. And then after that, I don't know the story, but
the GameCube was right around the corner, and then they decided to save it for the GameCube, which is where it ended up.
Yeah.
Also, for some reason, that's when Capcom signed an exclusivity deal with Nintendo, of all things. So that's why Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 1 Remake, and Resident Evil 0 were all on GameCube originally. Thankfully, they didn't sell well enough, so they broke the contract and were able to move it elsewhere. But
yeah, that's one of the reasons why I never beat Resident Evil 1 Remake and Resident Evil 0 until the re-release in 2016 or 2015 with the HD remasters, because I only played it at my cousin's place growing up, because I didn't own a GameCube. Like I was like, Nintendo, I don't want that. I want the PlayStation, game. So I'm like, bro, but yeah, so that was so weird. But it's funny too that RE4 was like, nah, we're gonna do it for the PS2. Let's do it for every console, after it basically became Skyrim essentially, like Capcom's Bethesda, like Skyrim. But yeah. Zom says, rumor is Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake may release in November, but not 100% confirmed. That's actually a really quick time zone. I mean, like, that's like, for it to release so soon, we haven't really heard that much, only like aside from like the first trailer. But you're a big Metal Gear Solid fan as well, right? I remember you mentioned that at the start of the podcast, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Try to remember the basics of CQC, right?
Yeah, no, I love Metal Gear Solid. It's probably the only other series that I have like an encyclopedic knowledge of, the way I do with Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Although it's way more complicated, so it's harder. But I'm super excited for it, and it would make sense because they always try to aim for like before the holiday.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess we'll continue on with Resident Evil, right? Now, I don't know if you've heard, Kai, because I remember we were talking before about, you don't really keep up with a lot of leaks, rumors, right? As mentioned, I don't really either, unless there's some legitimacy to these rumors. That's the only time where I'll cover it and I'll let my audience know, like, hey, this could be true because of this. Like, for example, recently we had a leak of Resident Evil being on GOG. Right. We had a leak saying that Resident Evil was going to get a re-release. And then sure enough, I actually checked the GOG site. I checked the Steam site, and then it turned out to be true with GOG. But stuff like that, right? I only do it when there's actual evidence that kind of backs it up because it was on the ESRB rating. But there's been a refresh of an old rumor that actually released back in 2022, I believe, right after Welcome to Raccoon City released in 2021. I think it was, November? I think that was during the pandemic, right? Basically, there was rumors that they were actually going to be making, we were just talking about Resident Evil 0, they were going to do a Resident Evil prequel to Welcome to Raccoon City. It was going to be shot in the same location that they shot in Canada. And those rumors kind of, the rumors that like where people got the information was legitimate. So they basically looked at the provincial, because in Canada we have provinces, we don't have states. They did look at the provinces' movies because when movies are being made, they do have to tell and publicly state that they're working on this. Well, there was a movie called Umbrella Chronicles that was basically being worked on, or it seems like they were just getting the rights and they were starting to kind of roll, get the ball rolling on that project. But recently, rumors have actually gone back up, and people are saying that that's happening again. That they are working actively on this prequel, this Umbrella Chronicles prequel. So my thoughts is that what are your thoughts on Welcome to Raccoon City, and what do you think of the same kind of guy working on a prequel? How do you think that? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
So I know what Welcome to Raccoon City ended up being, and I understand that. I have a very positive memory of it because I went to Vegas to see it with all the other creators, and that was a really special thing. But it is what it is, Like after watching it the second time, I was like, oh god. But as far as the sequel goes, here's a very simple way to this is how I operate.
Or sorry, a prequel.
Stuff I know.
It was a prequel, apparently.
Well, prequel, whatever. They're doing another movie. Find out if it made money. That's always the number one thing. If it made money, they will make more of it.
Yeah.
So looking at it right now, it looks like the budget was $25 million, but the film made $42 million.
Yep.
Guess what? That's profit. They're probably going to make another one. They will basically keep doing it until that's it. And even now, this popped up. First Resident Evil movie, $103 million with a budget of $20 million. Yeah. I know that literally off the top of my head because
the Mila Jovovich, right? Paul W. Yeah.
Wow, the final chapter made $312 million. That's surprising.
Really?
I didn't know that.
Wow, I hated that one. I hated Extinction and Final Chapter. And I guess that's our segue. What did you think of the Mila Jovovich movies and Welcome to Raccoon City? I guess after you watched it a second time, I want to hear your thoughts.
I will always stand by my opinion that the first movie was fantastic. I love that movie. It's actually, I ended up joining the film club in high school. It's what got me into acting and film production and all that stuff because not just as a Resident Evil movie, but as a movie in general. I mean, I watched the commentaries. I love that movie. Yeah. And I think that the reason it worked was because a lot of people complained that the characters from the games weren't in it. But because the characters weren't in it, they didn't ruin anything. Because guess what happened the moment they started putting characters from the game into the movies? It all went to hell. Yeah. From the second movie onward, it was just like, that's not canon. And then, because the first movie could have fit in the timeline. They could have made it work. But I don't know. I think they're fun movies. If you don't take them too seriously, they're fun popcorn movies. People get so worked up. It's just a movie. relax. Like,
yeah. I think I was seeing I think you were doing like 25 facts on like the first Resident Evil film or something like that. And I noticed some people I think were calling you, I think you even posted on community notes that people were calling you a fake fan for that.
Oh God.
What's that
people
about?
to this day still tell me I'm a fake Resident Evil fan, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
it's just the mob mentality. People on the internet don't know how to behave, and I'm not going to stand for it.
Yeah,
like, you know.
Yeah, and
like,
for me,
throw your little tantrum. I don't care.
Yeah, for me personally, I've never had that that I've never had somebody call me a fake fan. But here's the thing is that every time I always state in a review or something along those videos, I always state that, hey, like everyone's entitled to their opinion. You might like something that I don't like. Like, for example, I've publicly stated several times that I am not a fan of Resident Evil 7. I am not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the character. I don't like how it's a numbered title. I think it would have been better if it was like a Revelations, like a spin-off, something like that. I think I would have liked it a lot more if it was something like that. But of course, I'm definitely in the minority with that, right? Like nobody's going to agree with me. When Welcome to Raccoon City came out, I actually said, you know what? I think it's the closest Resident Evil movie that we've had to Resident Evil game. Like there's no denying that. Obviously the Mila Jovovich.
That's what I said too.
Yeah, like there's like the Mila Jovovich did its own thing. It was an original concept. They brought in a bunch of other characters, very loosely based. A lot of people state that the second Mila Jovovich movie was probably the closest we've had to the games. But Welcome to Raccoon City, I think, was even closer. Obviously, the bar is not set really high, and so Welcome to Raccoon City did not do a perfect job. But of course, a lot of people disagreed with me with that, right? They didn't like that I liked Welcome to Raccoon City. But when it comes to calling, and we kind of touched on this when I interviewed Andy from Biohazard Declassified, we also mentioned how some people were calling him a fake fan, and I don't remember what it was specifically, but I was like, that's one of the dumbest arguments to call somebody a fake fan. Like that doesn't even make any sense. Like for me personally, like from a logical standpoint, there's people that are casual fans, people that are hardcore fans, people that are kind of in the middle. Like they play all of the series, casual fans, maybe they play every once in a while a Resident Evil game. But to call somebody a fake fan just makes absolutely no sense. Like there's no way that you're a fake fan. Like how would you be able to make videos on stuff if that was the case? Like doesn't even make any sense. So yeah, that's what are your thoughts on people calling you other people fake fans?
Like that's one of the comments that is like one of the mean comments that's so ridiculous that I can't even get mad. It's just funny. Like
yeah,
I have an encyclopedic knowledge of this franchise. I can pull out crap that like most people don't even know, that isn't even relevant to anything. Yeah. I mean, even now, diving into the literal 3D models, I can tell you stuff like that no one else knows. And like, I just, help. Thank you for helping the algorithm.
Yeah, with the comments.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever.
Engagement, But yeah, no, I always thought that was some of the dumbest things, because I first heard that term being used with Andy. Andy brought it up in an interview I remember watching. I don't remember who it was with, but when he was on the podcast, I was like, no, I definitely want to bring that up and talk to him about what that term means, because it makes absolutely no sense. As mentioned, you could be a casual fan, you could be a hardcore fan, but to say that somebody is not a fan and that they're pretending, who would put the effort into that? It's illogical, completely illogical. So yeah, I'd
well, you have to also remember, you don't know who's behind the comment. It could be like a 11-year-old, It's better to just let it go. And I am not a fake Resident Evil fan, okay? Alice is my favorite character.
Yeah. But anyways, that was crazy, because I mean, it's interesting. You said something that I've always said as well. You said that the Mila Jovovich movies are like fun action, like they're fun movies. Like I've always watched them, especially when the movies came out. I watched them. Like I went to the theaters to go watch them. I had a blast watching them with my friends growing up and stuff. So it wasn't like, I never took it very serious. I always knew that, it's just, and also you also have to remember, going back to the early 2000s, things were always very loose. Like even video game movies back in the 90s, like I'm thinking of that Super Mario movie, or even like, I think they made Alone in the Dark. They've made Dead Rising movies. They've made like, it's like even Marvel movies. It's always been very loose with the story, like from the source material. And it wasn't until I think, later on with 2010s where I think they started getting a little more tighter, right? We got all the Marvel Avenger movies. So, but even then, right? It's like back in those days, you kind of, if it was a video game movie, like the Tomb Raider, it wasn't going to be exactly 1-to-1 like the video game, right? So I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm sure you probably watched Tomb Raiders growing up, right? The Tomb
I
Raider.
love the
Yeah,
first Tomb Raider movie.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love that movie. I
yeah,
think it was fantastic. I
yeah,
mean, it wasn't like 1-to-1,
yeah, yeah,
but it was beautifully done. And some
yeah,
people like hate it, but most of the Tomb Raider community loved it too. I mean,
yeah,
I didn't even know who Angelina Jolie was before that movie.
yeah,
Like, oh,
yeah,
but I think that there should always be consulting of like fans, because
yeah.
if you guys are Fallout fans, if you haven't seen the Fallout TV show,
Yes,
there is
yes,
no more accurate, like the love to the game
yeah,
that it's based on is there. I mean, every little tiny detail, it is exactly like the
yeah,
games. And it's like, was that so hard? Like, that's all you had to do. That's all we've been
yeah,
asking for all this
yeah.
time. And I'm hoping that the rave reviews from that will like help it. Also, Twisted Metal was fantastic. Like,
I see. Yeah, I
just
never watched that. Yeah,
yeah. So
I heard
we'll
good
have to
things
see,
about it.
like,
Yeah,
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 we'll have to see what they do. But
yeah, and yeah, kind of speaking to that, yeah, too. Fallout was really well done, but what was interesting about Fallout was that Todd Howard, I believe, the CEO of like Bethesda, I believe, like the main guy, he did
yeah,
state that he didn't want to make like the same thing. Like he didn't want to make Fallout 3. He didn't want to make the same story of Fallout New Vegas. He didn't want to do that because he's like, you can just play the game. I wanted to do something completely different that's in the same universe. But I mean, even with that, there were some fans from Fallout that were saying that New Vegas was all like changed. But I'm not too familiar with Fallout lore specifically, so I don't really know too much about the drama. It actually got me into playing the games, so I was playing Fallout 3 too after watching the show a little bit more because I don't know. It was a game that I never really could get into, but my brother's like, no, there's so many mods where you can sprint, you could, it just like quality of life updates. So I started playing that, and I was like, you know what, this is pretty good, aiming down
yeah,
sights and stuff.
it's kind
So
of like if you like Oblivion or Skyrim,
yeah,
but like
yeah,
you're not into the whole medieval thing. It's like you try that and you're like, yeah, I like this better. And that's how it was for me.
yeah, exactly.
But
For me, it was
Fallout's
the
great.
opposite. I was like, I really like the Skyrim, so I've
And
played.
that's fine.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
has their preference or
Yeah,
flavor or
yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Yeah, but no, but definitely getting to play that. But what I was going to ask was, is that do you think there's been talks? There's been a lot of people that have been talking on Twitter, as there always is, but I'm not always on there. But I was seeing some Resident Evil fans that were kind of discussing how when Fallout came out, they were like, "Bro," I think it was Andy. Andy was one of the people that was kind of talking about this, but he was like, they did an amazing job doing an original story with Fallout. So can they do the same thing with Resident Evil? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's hope is completely lost when it comes to obviously, like as you mentioned before, Resident Evil, they're going to keep pumping out if it makes money. But do you think they've learned their lesson?
So the challenge that they face is the stories have already been told.
Yeah.
And if they want to include the characters and story from the game, they have to incorporate a new story that fits in with the old story while keeping all those details.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. If it were up to me, I would make a series that was not a horror series of Resident Evil, but like a drama series or something where you get to see Claire like trying to find out what happened to Chris. You get to see Jill dealing with Chief Irons, and then her and Chris trying to like, communicate while everything's shutting down. You can see people living in Raccoon City like getting infected from
That's
drinking
what I was
water.
gonna.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's engaging. That's a powerful
Yeah.
story. But what do we know? We're not freaking like executives in an office somewhere who don't know. I feel very strongly that consulting fans is a really important thing. And, I think if Todd Howard wasn't the executive producer of Fallout, it might not have gone that well.
Yeah. Well, I mean that happened with Last of Us too, right? I'm thinking Last of Us was also spearheaded by the same guy that did it, right? I never watched The Last of Us. It was actually shot really. I talked to a bunch of extras that were a part of it. This was shot like in the city that I live in, but and it's actually the second season's being shot in my hometown, which is funny, or like where I'm from in Vancouver Island. But what's interesting about that is that the game director, I guess, or creative director, was also spearheading that as well, but. Yeah, I mean, I only watched the first episode of that, but they did add some more stuff to the story. But I don't know if you've watched Last of Us as well, or what do you think about that?
I didn't watch The Last of Us. I'm gonna get in trouble with people, but I'm not a big fan of The Last of Us because for me, that's the game that like is the epitome of games have become realistic movies that are like there's not really that much gameplay and it's just story, story, story. And I would just rather watch a movie than
Yeah.
play a game like that.
Yeah.
So
you
like
so you would
that
like
kind
the
of threw me out
original.
of it.
You would like the something original then is something you'd want to see, right? As
Well,
opposed to
yeah, I
watching,
mean,
yeah, the
well,
same
no,
thing
like if
over.
Last of Us was a show instead of a game, that'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. And I guess kind of going with that, you said that it could work if Constantine kind of learned their lesson and did something original that still kept the history of Resident Evil. So that kind of, when you mentioned that, it kind of made me think of the CGI movies, where the CGI movies have always done their own kind of thing. And it's still part of the same, canonical universe of Resident Evil, like the Resident Evil games. So, like, would you like something more like that? What are your thoughts on the CGI movies? I definitely want to hear your
Well,
takes on
a
that.
lot of people, I love the CGI movies. Like
Yeah.
when Degeneration came out, I was actually living in Japan when that came out, and I was like,
Nice.
oh my god, there was like cardboard cutouts of Claire and Leon in bookstores. It was so cool. But what I love about those is they are canonical and they're true to the story. And a lot of people don't realize this, but they are technically the anime adaptation. It's just that they're 3D instead of 2D. But they, for all intents and purposes, are anime. And I think every time one of those comes out, it's great. Sometimes there's weird stuff, like that poor waitress in Vendetta that got Gatling gunned.
Yeah.
That was just, or
Or Leon
killing,
getting
like,
drunk.
all the people. That too, like I don't, there's weird stuff here and there, but I'd rather have that than just like like Leon in the Mila Jovovich movie where he was there for 5 seconds and then just like did nothing, and it was like what?
Yeah, or the Mila Jovovich movies, what they would do, which was super weird, is that every ending, like for example, like we were talking about Apocalypse. Apocalypse left off with Jill and Carlos and the little girl being in the car. And then after Resident Evil Extinction just like threw that idea out. And then they also did that again with what was it, Afterlife, I believe?
Yeah, they like explained it in the books or something. I covered it, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I just remembered something that I saw.
Sorry, it was the fifth one.
There's
Sorry.
some adaptation of a video game TV show or something coming out, right? Oh, Borderlands, which I haven't played, but everyone's like talking about the TV show. I don't know anything about the game or the show.
Yeah.
But the actor that was being interviewed said something that I realized I have seen over and over and over again, and I never. This is like the death phrase. They said, "Fans will not be expecting what we're doing, but they'll love it." It's like, no, no, they won't.
Yeah.
People want to know what they're getting. They want to like get what they're expecting. Stop doing that. Stop, like, for the love of God.
You know what else too that I can't stand, and this is something that I also hear a lot with video game adaptations, is when they say that the actors have never played the game. That, or the director specifically tells the actor to not play the game. That, I'm like,
that I don't agree with, but I don't have a problem because you have to remember actors are actors. Like they're not gamers. That's fine.
But you can watch a Let's Play.
Do a good job acting. But like for example, Sienna Guillory to get in the role of Jill, like she wasn't good at Resident Evil, so she had like a friend play the game and she would like watch like recordings of it. She did a great job. She did fantastic, and she like picked up on the little details, but she really studied the game. Same with Fallout. The main girl, I forgot her name, but she like really played the games because she was like, I don't want to let the fans down, and we appreciate that when they do that. It means a lot. Like I don't know if they realize how much that means.
And that's a good point. It's like, I'm not expecting actors to play games if they're not gamers, but with our world now where we live with technology, with YouTube, with social media, there's so many live streams, there's so many Let's Plays of the games. You know what I mean? Like you could even watch like a retrospective. We were just talking about that before, right? Of a game, just so that you kind of get the gist of it, or like a YouTube short or TikTok. It's like you don't really need to shut out everything and do something, right? Like, for example, I think I was hearing Walter Goggins, which I really respect as an actor. I've always loved watching him in movies. He's always super funny and stuff. Who played, of course, the Ghoul in Fallout. But he also said, I never played the game, never touched it. It's like I didn't want to. I just wanted to stick with the script. I'm like, okay, like Like, come on, man. Like, you could have at least watched something, or even like Last of Us. With I heard that they told the actors not to watch the game, but the little girl that plays Ellie, I think her name is Bella Ramsey, I believe. She did play, I think, a game, or she did watch Let's Plays, just just to see what the character was. And it's like, yeah, like, that's weird to me when you have an actor who hasn't played. And you know what else too? We were discussing Welcome to Raccoon City. I remember some of my viewers were telling me that once the game came out, there was an interviewer who was interviewing the cast. So Claire, Chris, and somebody else in the cast. And they were asking them, is this a Resident Evil enemy? Like, is this enemy that I show you, is this from Resident Evil, or is it from another video game? And my viewers were telling me, watch that interview, because only Chris, the guy that plays Chris, who, what's his name? Robbie Amell, who I've also, I thought he did a fantastic job playing Chris. If anything, I thought that the movie did a bad job of incorporating him, but because the story wasn't great. But I thought he played a great Chris Redfield. One of my best scenes that I really enjoyed was when he was in the mansion pushing off all of the zombies, like really with force, because that's something that the T-virus, right? The zombies are super strong. So I thought that was a great scene, but he got all of it because he actually played the OGs, like, growing up. He played the RE1 remake. So stuff like that, right? Like, that's a huge problem in video games when you have the actor that knows nothing about the game. Absolutely nothing. Like, they couldn't even answer simple questions like Cerberus, which showed up in the movie. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, when you hear that?
I mean, no, it is important. Like, I always think of, oh my God, I'm trying to remember his name right now. He's the new Leon.
Nick Apostolides.
Yes. He played Resident Evil 2 back in the day, just like we did. For him, it's like, oh my God, I am Leon. Like, he knows the games, and same with Final Fantasy VII. Like, the voice actors of like Aerith and Cloud, they all played Final Fantasy VII back in the day. They're very familiar, and it's like a dream come true, and they have that respect for like the source material, which okay, maybe your actor didn't like have that, but definitely play the game. And I don't know, just again, consult the fans. Like, isn't market research designed for that?
yeah And you know what too, I'm not gonna get into it, but there was another movie too that specifically said, and I covered this when it released, specifically said that they asked a bunch of Resident Evil experts, and the movie ended up bombing. And I was like, bro, what? So stuff like that, where even like they're lying, right?
Well,
like,
they
even
interviewed fake fans like me.
No. But no, you know what I think it was, is that they probably did talk to any fan, but they just did not listen. They just wanted to do what they wanted to do. The executives were like, we got this, we're good. Constantine's like, I got it, we don't need to do that. But guys, let's actually catch up with some chats. We just have a couple more to read. Let's see. Oh shoot, I actually missed a lot, my bad. Welcome to Raccoon City was terrible. They ruined Wesker, all the other characters, in my opinion. I agree with you. RE7 is not good. Well, thank you, Caffeinated Fox. Yeah, we're definitely in the minority there. But yeah, I'm not a fan of it, honestly. I thought it was too focused on horror, as opposed to, here's the thing. I've always said this, and I don't know if you agree with me, Kai. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this. Resident Evil has always done a fantastic job of balancing horror with survival and action, right? They've always had that. Obviously, if you don't have one of those components, or if you have too much of one, the balance gets thrown off, and you have stuff like Resident Evil 6, right? But I mean, just thinking of, like, for example, RE1, like, you had the survival aspect of not having enough bullets to kill every single zombie, right? Stuff like that, where you had to be careful with the amount of shots that you shot, because not every shot was like a complete clean headshot. And that's the survival aspect of RE1. You also had the horror, which was, all of the creatures, that were in the mansion, breaking through the glass of the dogs. And you also had the action, right? The action was just fighting, right? Fighting, shooting, getting into confrontations with these crazy BOWs in the mansion. And I do have to say that, with every game that came with it, or Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, I think it was Resident Evil 3 where they really kind of started tipping the scale to more action oriented. So I don't know if you probably are well aware with RE3, they had the ability to shoot barrels. They had Jill, like the start of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is Jill just literally rolling and just pushing, like getting away from a bunch of zombies, getting out of like an explosion of like a burning building. Like that's pretty action packed. You know what I mean? And then you have those incorporations of inside the game where it seems like it's getting more action heavy or action on the tipping scale. And then you have Code Veronica, which also had a bunch of action. Like even the start of the of the game is her running in Paris facility, getting shot with the minigun, which is very reminiscent to what we saw with Apocalypse 2, with like the second Resident Evil Paul W.S. Anderson movie. So, and then after we had Resident Evil 4, and I think that's where a lot of fans were like, okay, this is too much action now. Right? Like I think Residents of Evil has gone out and said that when Resident Evil 4 came out, he kind of just stayed away from the series. He was like, bro, I don't really like that. So for me, I guess to finish off what I'm trying to say here is that for me, I thought that Resident Evil 7 played too much on the horror aspect, where I didn't like how certain times it almost felt like it was trying to be paranormal. Where, like, for example, Jack would run up to you and he'd be like, try to be creepy, and it was very like almost like there was something, the door closing at the start of Resident Evil 7 when you get into the mansion, stuff like that, where it's trying to be more supernatural, almost like Silent Hill. And you know what? My biggest point is that for this is the fact that Silent Hill did the PT, right? The PT demo. Mm-hmm. Is that what it's called? PT? Oh, is it called PT? I never played it, but PT. Yeah. PT, and that was super amazing. Horror, oriented. And I'm like, and with everything we've heard from Capcom, it seems they were really lost. They didn't know what to do with Resident Evil 7. It was very like I heard that in an interview recently, and even before with the Capcom website. But anyways, it seems like they had no idea what to do with the series after Resident Evil 6, and so they decided to kind of play it safe with the PT. And so that's my understanding, right? That's one of the reasons why I didn't like Resident Evil 7, because it just kind of tipped the scale more on the horror side. And for me, I don't understand when fans say that it kind of brought back to Resident Evil 1. Like Resident Evil 7 was a way to bring back, it brought us back to survival horror. Like for me, I thought it was still tipped on the scale of the balance. I thought it was more on the horror side of things. But what are your thoughts on that? What do you think? Do you agree with my assessment of it being like three things that make Resident Evil, or what do you think?
So the whole point of Resident Evil 7 happening the way that it did was because Resident Evil had kind of lost its identity and become this huge action game. Like Resident Evil 6 was like Gears of War, basically. Yeah. And
so more on the action.
Like, okay, we need to correct this. So even though you don't like it, Resident Evil 7 brought Resident Evil back, and it saved it. Because when you look at it just purely from a game design standpoint, all the things are there. Aside from the scares and all that, you got like the ink ribbon mechanics, green herbs, like item management, all the stuff that made Resident Evil what it was brought back. And for that reason, I respect it for what it is. Also in VR, oh my god. It's so scary.
A lot of people were telling me to do VR, but I mean, I should specify that I'm not saying that Resident Evil 7 is a bad game. It's just for me personally, right? When it comes to personal taste, I think that it definitely went on more of the horror side, right? So it's not a perfect balance of what we got with Resident Evil 1 or Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3. Well, Resident Evil 3, as mentioned, has started getting more on the action side. I'm not saying that Resident Evil should be like Resident Evil 6, for example, or it's way too much action. What I'm saying is that Resident Evil should be kind of in a balance. And I think by having those kind of moments where it was very kind of just right going into your face, we're trying to be very scary, I never had that playing Resident Evil 1 and 2. I don't know. For me, I didn't have those moments. I know a lot of people when the dogs came out, but it was never paranormal. And I guess that's where my point, that's where it loses me with Resident Evil 7. So I guess that was basically my point. I'm not saying that I don't respect Resident Evil 7 for bringing fans to the series, but another counter argument that I would say is that Resident Evil 7, for example, if you're a newer fan to the series and you play Resident Evil 7, is there another game that's similar to Resident Evil 7 in the whole series?
Well, Village.
Yeah, but even Village, like they went back to typewriters. They went, and Resident Evil 7 kind of went with cassettes, cassette players, but even with Resident Evil 8, you could liken it to more of it being similar to Resident Evil 4, right? Like even the devs, they said, we're going to turn this into Resident Evil 4. So even there, I would even argue that Resident Evil 8 Village was even more on the action side, but also kind of played with the horror with House Beneviento. But I'm just saying, like, for example, if I'm a new Resident Evil fan that just played Resident Evil 7, and you're like, what other game is there? Resident Evil 8 isn't a perfect match to Resident Evil 7, right? There's no other game. You can't say Resident Evil 1 is exactly like Resident Evil 7. You can't say Resident Evil 4 is exactly like Resident Evil 7. Or, you know, like what other game? Like, it's only Village, but like, as mentioned, Village only has a heavy aspect of, like, you know, with the Duke, the Merchant, the weapon system. It's very different from Resident Evil 7. So I guess that's one of my counter arguments, is that it's a very different game from the series, so much so that I would have enjoyed Resident Evil 7 more if it was a standalone game. You know, if it was a Resident Evil 7, you know, the match, you know, I don't know, something else, right? Something different, but not numbered. I think I would have enjoyed Resident Evil 7 a little bit more. But there's no denying here, I'm not saying that Resident Evil 7 is a bad game. I'm not saying that I hate, like, that it's complete trash. I'm not saying that at all, but yeah.
So remember when I said they should consult fans?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. But I guess I wanted to hear what you think of that counter argument that, you know, Resident Evil 7, there's no other Resident Evil 7 like it, right?
Well, it was a Hail Mary. They were just trying to, like, because
get out of the groove, right?
The interesting thing was, financially, Resident Evil 6 did very well. Capcom could have just kept going, but they cared enough that they were like, okay, we made money, but the fans are not happy. We gotta, like, everyone kept saying the same thing, is we want horror.
Yeah.
They went in a very unexpected way with it.
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan of first person games in general.
Yeah.
So like 7 and Village aren't my favorite.
Yeah.
Although in VR it changed everything. Like, it's amazing.
I definitely have to play them
for VR, so I have to, like, exclude that. But I don't know. It had to be done, and I'm thankful for it, because I think those led to getting us, like, Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake, Resident Evil 4 remake, and, you know, it got the series back on the rails, because we almost lost Resident Evil. A lot of people don't remember that.
I agree. Yeah.
Not only 6, but, you know, 5 wasn't very well received, and then, you know, Outbreak had failed, and there was, like, you know, Code Veronica didn't sell well, so the series was kind of just, like, going and floundering all over the place. But they're not my favorites either, but I don't mind them. I'm like, okay, we needed
it's still
them.
Resident Evil at the end of the day. And I guess my other question too, somebody brought up a very good point. They said, but there's nothing paranormal in Resident Evil 7, question mark. I know there's nothing paranormal about it, but I'm saying they very loosely played with that idea. For example, you know how the Mega Mice seat works, and how, for example, like when Ethan's walking around the whole mansion or wherever he is, he's always seeing glimpses of whatchamacallit, shoot, I forgot her name. Evelyn. He's always seeing glimpses of her, almost as if she's like a ghost. Obviously, Resident Evil has always done a good job of doing it's always been grounded in pseudoscience. But what I'm trying to say here is that the jump scares where it shows, like, you know, like Jack appearing out of nowheres, popping up in your face, having, you know, Evelyn show up almost like a ghost throughout the whole entire game after you've been infected, or even even Resident Evil 8 Village kind of took this to another level, which we've never seen before with Shadow of Rose. What are your thoughts with Shadow of Rose, where they started making it almost like the Mega Mice seat was a different world? It was like where souls get trapped, you know, where that's where Miranda was after so many years after Resident Evil. That's very paranormal. Like, I know obviously in Shadow of Rose they tried to explain it in a pseudoscience way, but I think right there, you're stepping too much on the line of paranormal, where it's like, bro, it almost felt like I was in Stranger Things. You know, like when you enter the Mega Mice seat to fight Miranda at the end. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Ink, on that. What are your thoughts on it? Was that too far for Resident Evil, or was that good in your opinion?
I mean, they did what they did. Honestly, I think they were just using the virus as an excuse to like, oh, it's hallucinations or whatever, just to get all that out of their system. Yeah. And with Village, I am actually fine with it, because Village came out like unintentionally at the perfect time, because we were in the middle of a pandemic, and just nobody wanted to think about infections or viruses. Like, you know, it was a nice escape, and it was just very well timed. And then after that, it was like, okay, back to the Resident Evil we know and love. Yeah. But I guess what are your thoughts on Shadow of Rose? Did you like it, or did you think that it was
too much, or did you think were you just completely fine with it? I guess that's what you're saying, or
Shadow of Rose.
yeah, the DLC for Village. It's basically where you're with Rose. I don't know if you remember the story, but that whole thing
Rose,
was very.
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking of Eevee for some reason.
I see.
Shadow of Rose was fine. Also, in case you guys don't know, like that's the end of that timeline. They're not doing anything with the Winters family anymore.
And I'm glad.
A lot of people thought Resident Evil 9 was going to be about that, but it's not. Sorry to tell you. Like, I can confirm that. But I thought it was a nice bow just to be like, okay, and that's that. Like, we're good to go.
I see, but you didn't have any issues with Rose descending into a world of the Megamycete, and obviously somebody said, yeah, but that was explained because of the mold pseudoscience as well. Yeah, no, Ancient and Bored. I'm not saying that it wasn't. I'm saying that it was, but if you remember, what I'm saying is that it's very touching upon. For example, it's touching upon paranormal aspects, paranormal things. Like, for example, Silent Hill. Silent Hill is not, like it's very paranormal. So for that sort of a game, that's completely fine. And as mentioned, Resident Evil has always explained stuff through pseudoscience. But what I'm basically getting at here is that Resident Evil 8, like Village, Resident Evil 7, really kind of were playing on the role of having the Megamycete being almost like having paranormal aspects, like having the Megamycete keep Ethan's consciousness, basically his soul, and keeping it in a world like a mini kind. Like, these are all terms, these are all terminologies that you could explain with paranormal, like names. Like, he was stuck in like like it's like, for example, what I'm getting at here is that it's playing very closely with that paranormal side, but keeping that pseudoscience. But I don't think it was a good job. For me personally, I think that once we got into a whole another world where it was almost like going into the upside down, if you will, like in Stranger Things, and fighting Miranda, who we already killed in Resident Evil 8, but the Megamycete stored the information, stored literally Miranda, her consciousness. Again, these are all things that science, we don't have a good grasp on. So obviously you can't explain it with pseudo, but now we're going past that. We're going closer to paranormal, where it's almost like they kept the ghosts of everybody. You know what I mean? And I guess the other pseudoscience thing that they also tried to incorporate in the Megamycete, which is not, I think at that point there's no longer science there, is they tried, there was an experiment where you could find near the end of Shadow of Rose, where Mother Miranda states that she basically tried to make an entity. She tried to make Duke in the Megamycete, and that was unsuccessful. So right there, it kind of explains that you definitely need the person's essence. You definitely need the person's spirit or soul or consciousness to have the person be in the Megamycete. So this is what I mean. The terms are very it's going past science at that point. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I guess now that you're saying all this, I'm reminded that a lot of the story just went over my head when I played Village. And even after doing my Secrets and Easter eggs video, I don't really remember much other than, like, I remember just being like, what the hell is Blue Umbrella? But again, I think someone at Capcom just had to get all of that out of their system. And then now we can move on to, like, what we know and love. But yeah, maybe someone was just a really big, like, Star Wars fan or something. I don't know. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah, somebody said midichlorians or mumbo jumbo like that. Yeah, so, like, even with that's explaining it in a pseudoscience way in Star Wars, but that doesn't change the fact that this is completely, like, paranormal stuff or completely spiritual stuff, if you want, esoteric stuff where science isn't there. You can explain it in a pseudoscientific way, like midichlorians, or these are the counts of things, but once you get into the thick of things, there's no science there. You know what I mean? Like, it's completely well, one of the things that I always loved about Resident Evil is that they've always explained it with the pseudoscience, but it's always been in a believable world. Like, for example, having pharmaceutical companies work on trying to, working with governments, and then working, to make a basic, like, wasn't the T virus something that they wanted, which was supposed to be good for people, right? Like, they essentially wanted to make people stronger. I mean, that's what you kind of get from the games. But then obviously it turned into making people that were dead, right? Making the dead alive. So
I never understood why Umbrella didn't just make, like, weight loss things, or, like, imagine a pill you take and you just become muscular with no, like, steroid side effects. I mean, or something that will, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like when Resident Evil takes place in like reality,
Yeah.
like something that's feasible with like
Yeah.
a virus escaping a lab, and not that we don't know anything about that, but it's
The
just
C virus.
yeah, I know, right? From China. But I think like they've gotten their ducks back in a row, and I'm expecting Resident Evil 9 to be less Village and more like 2 and 3. But,
Yeah.
fingers crossed. We don't know, because Resident Evil 4 also did really well, and that was kind of its own thing too. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. And yeah, and I guess kind of going with that, we were kind of discussing CG. We kind of went off, but I definitely wanted to ask you about what characters do you want Capcom to bring back? Now, this could be in the form of bringing them in a CGI movie. We were talking about that, or perhaps bringing them in a remake or Resident Evil 9. What characters do you want to see in Resident Evil 9? Who do you think needs to come back that hasn't had a bunch of that hasn't had their time in the sun? Because we've had too much Chris and Leon, right? I think we can all agree on that. Right. So
Billy, Steve, Sheva.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's so many people. I mean, even now Ashley, everyone loves her. Bring her back. Now that you've fixed her.
Yeah. Oh yes. Thank you, Capcom, for fixing Ashley, because she was so annoying. So annoying in the OG.
But, I also think the Outbreak characters were very compelling. Like I'd love to see Kevin or Cindy or Alyssa or David, like,
in a CGI,
Outbreak should just come back in general in any way, shape, or form. Like, please, for the love of God, Capcom. Like, if Outbreak anything is ever announced, I'm gonna scream.
And I think, wait a second, I'm remembering, I think you covered something in Resident Evil 3 Remake. I think this was a Easter egg that you found, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it was your video, if I remember correctly, where it was Kevin's kind of talk, like he was talking on the radio.
Yeah,
once you jump over,
there's a police car.
like
it's in the area
ambulance
in front of the gun shop.
Oh yeah, police car. Yeah.
You can hear a radio call from Kevin from Outbreak, which is confirmed. Yeah. So, like, that's the closest. That's like the closest nod we've gotten. That, and then Alyssa writing an article that was in 7. That's the only inklings of Outbreak that we've gotten.
Yeah. And you said someone very interesting. You said Steve Burnside. Now, what's your thought on Steve? Because this was very weird. Because I remember when I played Darkside Chronicles, I think it was Darkside. Wasn't it Darkside where you had Wesker taking? I think there was like a scene where you had Wesker taking Steve. Was that in the OG as well? I'm trying to think.
It wasn't shown, but it was said that he took Steve's body.
Yeah.
And when I talk about Steve, I'm talking about Darkside Chronicles Steve, because just like Ashley, they fixed him in Darkside Chronicles and made him like likable and everything. But
Steve was way better in Darkside.
Like he's a perfect. Also, if like I know Steve's dead, confirmed, but Piers also was dead, and Piers like sprouting his like big like blade armor, all that. Imagine if Steve came back for a more like interesting take where he's like Sherry in 6, where he's still got a little bit of that virus in him and he can maybe do something cool, so maybe instead of using guns he can like sprout a big
frog
claw
hand
and kill someone, or and that could be cool for the story, because imagine him and Claire being reunited and he has to like fight, maybe he has to inject himself with something to like repress it, and like maybe he runs out of the injection thing and tries to kill Claire again, and it could be really emotional, it could be so impactful. But I don't know. There's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, that was something that that was something that was I thought was very that was almost like a wasted opportunity, because obviously it's alluded that through Steve that Wesker essentially took the virus, the T Veronica, right, the T Veronica virus. And then from that, he also did with the remake, right? We saw in RE4 remake, we saw him take Krauser's body, So it's interesting. He likes to. It seems Wesker just loves taking people's bodies. Like he's got to stop with. He's got to stop that. But this is something that I've always wanted, is to see Steve again. And I think you said an excellent point, is to bring back Steve from Darkside, because Steve from the OG, oh my gosh. It's one of like the I think I ranked one of the most annoying characters in Resident Evil, and Steve was definitely up there. Yeah, he's definitely up there. But yeah. Um, anyways, let's move on. I definitely wanted to see ask you. Um, yeah, and I guess yes. Wait a second. Yeah, Capcom's been kind of doing this trend where they've been remaking a bunch of stuff, especially with, releasing or announcing that they're remaking, I guess, or remastering Dead Rising. And with all the Resident Evil remakes, what other games, in your opinion, well, not just with Capcom games in general, but also with other Resident Evil games. I guess this is a two-parter question. What Resident Evil games should Capcom remake? And what other Capcom games should Capcom remake as well or reboot?
Well, my immediate answer is Outbreak.
Yeah.
I think Outbreak should just be brought back. Clean up the graphics a little bit, make the network system a little better, make sure there's voice chat, all the stuff that it didn't have because it was ahead of its time. And maybe, like I'd be happy to pay for DLC costumes or whatever. Like, if you want to like play as Jill or whatever, fine. I don't care. Just bring it back because Outbreak is the most like Raccoon City experience, not to mention it's actually the best feeling tank controls in the series, and there's so much little lore like with all the items you can pick up and the locations you can go to. And I still think that destroying Raccoon City was Capcom's biggest mistake with Resident Evil. There was so much left to do there. So for all those reasons, hands down, Outbreak. Like if I had to pick any Capcom franchise or even any game in general, I would want Outbreak back. And my fingers are still crossed. I will do whatever I can to help that happen. But I'm such a big fan of Outbreak. You don't even know. Or maybe you do.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things that was kind of sad too was that a lot of people wanted to explore Raccoon City a lot more with the remake of 3, right? I mean, RE2 remake was always, you in like the dirtier areas, right? You were in the police station and the sewer, right? And then the lab or whatever, factory, whatever. But what I'm getting at is that RE3 remake didn't really deliver or scratch that itch of exploring Raccoon City, which was something that the OG had, taking sections like Raccoon City Park or whatever, taking that out of the game, stuff like that, which was missing, right? Like we definitely wanted to explore more areas, wanted to feel more like a city. Well, in the remake, they kind of just gave us just like a block that you could just go back and forth. I think, and kind of going along with that, I guess, would you be happy with the deluxe remaster of Outbreak? I asked the same question to Andy, or would you want them to fully remake something like that and have it in the newer style?
I'd be happy with a port, like anything. Just like literally just re-release it with voice chat, and you will have like guaranteed success. It's fine as it was. I don't think there's anything wrong, and it had so many cool things going for it. Like, just even from a gameplay standpoint, like for example, instead of just unlocking a costume by getting a high score or something, you had to actually find the individual items for that outfit, like the shirt and the pants and the shoes. And once you have them all, then you can unlock it. Like little things like that. It was just so cool, or finding when you go to the hotel and you can see that one of the guests was Claire Redfield. I mean, that's all we wanted. Like, it's great.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
I personally, I never beat the Outbreak games. I had Outbreak File 2 growing up, but I was not allowed to play online as a kid. So on PS2, I don't even know how that worked, honestly. So I never played. I was honestly lost. I was like, this seems like I need to play it with friends, but I don't understand online. And I was like, I wasn't allowed to, so I never did that. But obviously, I've seen you stream with the new fan servers. Right, I've seen Residents of Evil, other streamers as well, and I definitely wanna to kind of experience it, right, for the first time. Because as mentioned, me walking around certain areas as a kid, I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was completely lost.
If you're a Resident Evil fan, there's a lot there to experience. It's worth it. Single player is a little, but I played it single player back in the day, and I was fine.
And going for the two-parter question, what's a Capcom game that you think needs a remake aside from Resident Evil?
Well, obviously Dino Crisis, but that's
Yeah,
been said to death. We're all
yeah,
very aware of that,
yeah,
and I can't believe it hasn't even
yeah,
happened yet.
yeah.
Instead we got Exoprimal, which is, oh my god, it was exactly what we all wanted.
Dude, that was such a letdown. Everybody was like freaking out with the trailer. Oh, what was it? It was like a PlayStation showcase or something. I don't know. I was watching it live. I didn't cover it. I wasn't streaming it. But bro, I was watching that. I think I was eating cereal. I almost, spit my cereal out thinking, "Oh my
Well,
gosh, it's
even having the
Vegeta."
character with like red hair, it was like a bait and switch. Like that's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about when they say, "Oh, fans aren't going to be expecting this, but they'll love it."
Yeah.
No, like if
Yeah.
that was Regina, we would have all just been like, "Yay!"
Yeah.
If it
Yeah.
was still Exoprimal, but they put Regina in it,
Yeah.
we would have been like, "Okay, we'll take it." But
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Um,
But I
I
guess
would
aside from
also
Dino
say,
Crisis. Yeah.
I would also say Dead Rising, but like that we're getting that now, so
Yeah.
never mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Capcom's pretty on top of their franchises. I think aside from the ones we just mentioned, they're not
Yeah.
really too neglected. They know what works. So
Yeah, or with the Capcom polls too. I mean, I know you were covering this as well when the news came out. They've done like 3 polls back. I think back to they did the 2 polls back to back recently, if I'm not mistaken. And then before, I think it was back in like 2022, they did another poll. So it's very fishy. It seems almost like they're trying to do. And Dead Rising honestly came out of nowheres. Funny enough, my brother was just starting his first ever playthrough of Dead Rising, my little bro, and then they get announced that they're making they're doing the deluxe remaster. And so I guess kind of segue over that. What's your history with Dead Rising? What's
I
yeah
love Dead Rising. So that was I had a 360, but I had like the really bad Red Rings of Death, and I
oh
just it
shoot
never recovered. No matter how many times Xbox sent it back, it was still broken.
dang
But that was I had Dead or Alive 4 and Dead Rising, and I remember like sneaking into like my parents' room because they had a plasma TV because those were new at the time, and I plugged in my 360 like when my mom was at work, and I was like, oh my god, like the graphics. And just so I actually have a weird thing with dead malls or just malls in general.
Yeah.
Being a millennial growing up in the 90s, that used to be a really big third place for a lot of people, and being able to just run around a mall and like attack stuff. Also, like being into 3D art the way I am, the environments are so nice and well done that I would literally just run around and just look at stuff. And I was also interested in going into game design at that time, so I was trying to figure out like how did they do these textures and stuff like that. So I mean, that game just had so much. And then also I love costumes, and running around and trying on all the clothes even if they're ridiculous was really fun.
Like, the Japanese humor and some of the clothing options was great. I love that. I love that.
In Dead Rising 2, when there was the banana hammock, I was like, finally developers understand. Like,
wait, the banana hammock? Wait, what's that?
That's like the Borat thong.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes.
I was like, we need this, dude. We need this more. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, I was just streaming Dead Rising 2, and fellow our Resident Evil, indie game YouTuber Virus the Virus put that on as I was like, bro, I forgot that was there. I forgot about the Borat.
See, that's how I think you can solve the whole like objectifying women problem, is just do the same for men, objectify everybody and make it optional. And then if you don't want to wear that, don't wear it. And if you do, great. And there you go. Everybody wins.
No, definitely. What was that? What else was I gonna ask too? Oh yeah, this is a question that I've been having a lot, especially in my videos, and I kind of wanted to hear your take from a game dev perspective. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this because it seems very ambiguous. I'm not gonna lie. When Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster came out, there was a lot of people that said that were very like, oh, it's called a remaster, so that means it's a remaster. But then there's other people that were like, is this a remake? And I think you're the perfect guy to ask this question because, I think even when it comes to Resident Evil, I think you made a video years ago, right, talking about reimaginings and how that's what Capcom has officially called the Resident Evil. But we all call it remakes, funny enough. We all call Resident Evil 2, 3, 4 remake, even though their original name is just Resident Evil 2, 3, 4. And it's a reimagining according to Capcom. So I guess my thoughts was, what do you think on the whole thing with, is Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster a remaster, or is it Is it a remake or a bit of both? What is it? I'm very curious to hear your thoughts.
So I actually got into a fight with a friend over this.
Oh my
I was screaming at him on the phone.
Oh
Like,
my
it was
gosh.
it was an actual fight. So if you were to ask me,
Yeah.
I don't care what the developers say. I don't care
Yeah.
how much work went into it.
Yeah.
If the core game is underneath all the polish, it
Yeah.
is a remaster. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure that they put in a ton of work and it was very challenging and all that. But if they did not change the core gameplay mechanics
Yeah.
and it's actually using the original base gameplay in any way, shape, or form, which they even said they're still using the same animations,
Yep.
it's a remaster. A
Yep.
remake is when they completely 100%
Yeah.
make the game from scratch. Like Resident Evil 2 remake, that
Yep.
is a remake. None
Yep.
of the original game is in
Yep.
it at all.
Yep.
That is like, I don't know how much more simple to make it for people, but apparently, like,
Yeah.
he was arguing with me, and I was just screaming out, like, "That's not a remaster!" Ah!
No, and you know what? I definitely want to hear different perspectives because I'm coming from a gamer perspective. It was very strange because it almost seems like even the developers didn't know what to call it, because specifically, and I quote, I have the quote here: the only thing we know for sure that's exactly the same, or it's built off of the original, so it's not exactly the same, but it's like half, I don't know, maybe half, 10%. We don't know the full details. Was I think it was the art director. He said specifically. Well, no, not. There was another quote. Wait a second. I'm trying to find it. Yeah, that's right. I think it was the art director. Here we go. He says, for character animations, we try to limit unnecessary changes. So they did make some changes. That's already confirmation of that. And use the original data as much as possible, especially during action scenes. So it seems they have added from that wording, right? We're still not finished the code, but from that wording, it does seem like it's almost like they've changed some stuff, but it's safe to say that the character animations are definitely built off of the groundwork of the original. But he continues on and says, we could have made them more realistic with today's tools, but we wanted to preserve the unique and comical movements that made the original Dead Rising so special. End quote. So with that, I mean, here's the thing with what you were saying, right? You were basically saying that when it comes to a remake, it does it needs to be completely brand new. There's nothing of the OG that's been used. And right there with that from that director, we already know from the art director, we already know that the character animations was built off of the OG. But we don't know suffice information to know if it was the other stuff. Was all of the other things completely built from the ground up? Was the mall completely built up from the ground up? It seems like it was. I don't know. Again, this is all speculation because we don't know 100% with the developers. But one thing I can safely say is even with the start of Dead Rising, we saw a bunch of the trees, right? Like if you played the OG with the start, it looked like almost polygons. I brought this up with Andy, Andy from Biohazard Declassified, and how the OG just like it didn't have trees, and then the new one, there's definitely trees. It's a different environment completely. Like they look like they actually made an environment while the OG was just kind of just like polygons of grass over the mountain. So I guess with that, it almost seems, and this is what my question was, is it almost seems like the developers don't really know what to call it. So I think that's why they went with such a vague name of deluxe remaster. Why not just call it a remaster at that point, right? So what's your take on it? Do you think it's half and half, or do you think it's still a remaster, but since they've made new stuff, that's why Capcom decided to make it a deluxe? They call that name at a deluxe remaster. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, that's the thing too, is it's starting to get to the point that it's like there's so much work going into these remasters that it's like, at what point, is it no longer a remaster and it's something else? I still wouldn't call it a remake. But maybe it just had so much work put into it that they were like, well, it needs to like be called something. Like remaster isn't a strong enough word, but because then there's other games that are different. Like for example, Dark Side Chronicles. I mean, like sort of a remake, but not really a spin-off. I don't know. I don't even know what you call it, but it was the first time we got to see Resident Evil 2 in like, new graphics or whatever. So who knows? It's just
for that, I think it would technically be like a remake, right? Because they had to make, like, they didn't use the same assets of the OG for that. or did they? I'm just saying.
Oh
I'm
no, it was
obviously.
completely made from scratch.
Yeah, yeah. So that would constitute it as being a remake, would it not? I mean, these terminologies are so confusing, and I think personally, I think that's why there's so many viewers that are like, "What?" They're like, "What is this?" And I think even like my previous guest, the professional, he brought up an excellent point. He said when they announced Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, they obviously didn't think that, when they mentioned the deluxe edition, it's literally called Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster Deluxe Edition. And it's like, wow, that's a mouthful. So
Yeah,
even
but
with that,
that's just Capcom like leaning into their like arcade route or roots.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, it seems like, is there a definitive definition for remake, or do you think it's very loose? I'm very curious to know. Is there
I,
like,
not officially, but what I
yeah,
said is what I go by. Where if
yeah,
any
yeah,
of the original
yeah,
game is still there
yeah,
underneath it all, I don't care how beautiful it looks. If it's
yeah,
the original game, it is
under the
it is
hood, yeah,
just a remaster.
yeah, yeah,
But if you start from nothing and build it from scratch, it is a
yeah,
remake.
yeah. Yeah, and as stated, right now we don't have enough information to know if it was just the character animations, if it was just that. But by your definition, with that definition that you stated, it would still be formed with a remaster. So that's why I definitely wanted to hear your perspective, Kai, because I know you're a game dev. So I wanted to hear that because, what we kind of went, and I guess this is what your friend brought up, is that, the creative director said that it wouldn't be bad to call it a remake. So him saying that and having fans say that, it's interesting to hear how there's so much debate going around this kind of conversation. But that's the reason why I wanted to know if there's a definitive definition for remaster, for remake when it comes to video games, reimaginings. That's something that I've never heard until Capcom brought that up. Would you consider the Resident Evil remakes a remake or a reimagining, because it's so different from the OG? Was the Resident Evil 1 remake, the first one, is that like an official remake because it tried to keep one-to-one a lot of the stuff? But you could also argue that since they added new areas completely, is that a reimagining, adding Lisa, Trevor? So it almost seems like this is all just like we're all playing on different definitions, right? Like all of these definitions isn't a concise, there's nothing that you can, the dictionary says, or not the dictionary, but I don't know, video game developers all agree that this is what this is. It almost seems like it's all very, very different. I don't know. Because I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is because there's not a clear, concrete definition, and there's so many different types. Resident Evil 1 is actually a perfect example of that, because you have Resident Evil, then you have Resident Evil 1 on GameCube or whatever, like the
HD
remake. And then let's say hypothetically they made Resident Evil 1 in the style of Resident Evil 2 remake, or even Resident Evil 4 or whatever, where it was like a whole new reimagined thing. Those are still both technically remakes. But depending, like, let's say they did it, but they changed all sorts of stuff. Maybe now it's a reimagining. I don't know. It's kind of, it can be both. You can have a remake and a reimagining be the same thing. It's just, it's complicated.
Yeah. So I guess that's something that we definitely.
It's a pet peeve for me to have people argue with me about that, because I got uncharacteristically mad. I was like,
no, and I definitely don't want to make you mad with that. If anything, I definitely wanted to hear your perspective as a game developer, because that's something that I don't have. I don't have that kind of experience with stuff, right?
I'm not the end all be all.
Exactly.
I don't work in AAA space, so I don't know what they're calling it. It's just by my definition, as long as there's original game underneath all of the polish, it's a remaster.
Yeah. And I think what we can both agree on is that it does seem like even Capcom was confused, which is a AAA company. Like, even they could have called it a remaster and just been done with it. But then I guess it kind of brings up the other topic of, well, you guys already remastered the OG Dead Rising. So then how can you have two remasters? You know what I mean? And then it kind of adds kind of confusion. I've also heard another point where somebody was bringing up how it's a deluxe remaster. So that just automatically means that it's a little bit more than a remaster. So it's almost like they've had remake for other stuff, and then they've put the remaster of and I'm like, how? Like, how do you know that?
What that happens?
That's not a common word.
There's also ports, which get a lot of people confused, because because they say the word HD on something doesn't mean they did anything. Like, okay, for example, Dead Rising came out on 360, and then they released it for the, I think, PS3 or PS4.
2016.
That is not a remake. That is not a remaster. That is a port.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything. Maybe it's in better quality because you have better like HDMI or whatever that's been updated. but it's
I think
the
60
same
frames.
game,
I
the
think.
same exact game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the only one is that they put it to 60 frames if I'm not mistaken, but maybe I'm wrong with that. But yeah, that's an excellent point as well. So I guess what we can definitely agree on is that there needs to be a concrete definition for reimagining, remake, and remaster and ports, because those are four things that a lot of consumers, gamers, are getting very confused about. And it seems even AAA game developers like Capcom is getting confused as to what they should name their games, right? As well.
Yeah, and if you want to make that video, you go ahead. I don't have
No.
like the patience to deal with everybody
Yeah.
fighting in the comments.
Yeah. No, I love a good debate. So yeah, I've already been doing that. I've already been doing it.
Yeah,
and you know what?
I'm
This will
not
serve as a video. This will serve as the video. But yeah, because like I said,
you
I
can
definitely
use this for that video.
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
want to use like my quotes or whatever. But
Yeah. No, but yeah, man. Well, yeah, that's basically. Oh, the other thing too. Last question, Kai, because I know it's we've been talking for a lot, but last question is, what upcoming games are you hyped to play this year or this upcoming year? What games are you hyped to? Because I know you mentioned at the start that you were kind of feeling a little bit like stale with video games, right? You were saying that. I don't know if you could elaborate a little bit more with that as to why your feelings on that. Is there any games that you're hyped about?
Honestly, there's not a lot of games that get me excited these days.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we were talking about with the AAA space.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm really excited about a lot of indie games. And what I've actually been doing is sort of reverting to older games and playing a bunch of games that I never got to experience. Like, for example, right now, I'm struggling to get it to work, but I played a little bit of Snatcher, which was on the Sega CD, and it was one of Kojima's like first games.
Dang.
And just in like the 20 minutes that I played, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And that gets me excited. I like to study like older games and see how they work. But aside from that, I showed you Baldur's Gate. I have Persona 3. I have Stellar Blade. I have so many games I want to play.
I need to play that too. Stellar Blade looks it looks pretty hot, honestly.
Yeah, I know. Like, why not? And then there's also like MGS Delta, which I'm really excited for.
Yeah.
Now this, just to briefly touch on what we were just talking about. Delta is interesting because this is the first time when everything is being remade except the story, is because they're even using the original voice acting and everything.
Yeah,
so
very weird. Usually
it's like, we're gonna touch up the gameplay, we're gonna touch up like this, and this time they're like, no, we're keeping the story and we're changing everything else. So it's like, it's like a other way around kind of remake. But either way, that
so
makes
would
me
that be a
happy because...
remaster? I'm curious.
It's a remake. No.
But wait, they're using the voices. I mean,
when
your
I
definition
said that, I was
before,
talking about the
I see, like the actual behind the hood
gameplay.
of the game development. Yeah. I see.
Well, when it comes to games, it's the gameplay.
Yeah.
That's where like the word remake and remaster starts to take place, because you can change the graphics all you want, and if the gameplay is the same, it's the same game.
Yeah.
But this time around, they're just they're kind of shortcutting the story and just being like, well. Yeah, which is kind of cool because I know it's not going to be messed up or ruined in any way.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I thought was kind of a letdown was the fact that they're reusing the same voice lines. I would have liked it if they brought back the actors so that they can pay them instead of using something that was used like 20 years ago.
They'll get paid.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because
they'll get residuals, but just so you know,
not as much as
the reason. A lot of people don't know this, but Kojima doesn't like David Hayter and tried for a long time to get him fired.
Yeah.
And eventually did, which is why he wasn't the voice in Metal Gear Solid 5.
Kiefer Sutherland, yeah.
So, I'm happy to have David Hayter continuing to be, because I mean he is Snake. Like that's the voice of Snake, and it's weird when it's not. So I was really worried about that, and I would rather have the same voice lines and the same story than have it changed and be ruined.
And I guess there's another thing that I also was going to ask you too. Do you think that's lazy for AAA studios to kind of remake stuff or kind of remaster stuff and use like the same exact thing? Like, for example, even if it's a remake / reimagining, doing that kind of work, is that considered lazy amongst game developers? Because technically they're not really doing anything new or creatively new, right? They're doing, like, for example, Metal Gear Solid Delta, as you mentioned, you're going to use the same story, the same voice actors, same voice lines. So it's the same MP3 or WAV files that they used back in 2002. But creatively, would that be boring for a game developer? Do you think would you consider that lazy for the studio? Maybe not the developer, but for the studio to do that instead of doing a new product?
Well, there's two factors you have to take in. First of all, we're talking about Konami here, so like
Yeah.
Konami doesn't have the best track record,
Yeah,
and
it's a good point.
so it's pros and cons because on one hand, you could definitely say that it's lazy and they're cutting corners,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, maybe they're so scared to change anything that they're just like, we're just going to leave it alone so that nobody complains.
Yeah.
You know, which of course people will complain no matter what you do.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It could go either way. It could also be contract negotiations. Maybe they had the money for the development of the game, but they didn't have enough money because remember, it's not just the story. You'd have to hire actors, writers. You'd have to do the motion capture. Like, well, I guess they're gonna have to do that anyway. But like, there's so much more that goes into it. I'd imagine it saved a lot of development costs just to go with the original story. You know.
Yeah.
So it could be either or, it could be both. I don't know what's going on at Konami. I'm just glad that Metal Gear Solid is getting some sort of like, you know, I think Konami finally picked up on what Capcom's doing and they're like, they're making a lot of money doing remakes. Why don't we try that and see if we can get our fans back? Or we could just make more pachinko machines.
Or like the silent, the pachinko was so weird how they basically like remade certain scenes of like the OG. And even Ajay, thank you Ajay for stopping by. He says some of the mechanics comes from Metal Gear Solid 5, the Phantom Pain. Yeah, I don't know if we know that 100%, but it definitely looks like it's, I mean, they could have, right? I mean, they own all the assets and all of the mechanics, I guess, right? What do you think about that? Because it did look a lot like Phantom Pain.
This is a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier, that there's a lot of games getting remakes that there's other games that deserve them. I would so rather have like the original Metal Gear game, like the one that was on NES. Imagine that remade into a fully fledged game where you get to see Gray Fox and you get to see like young like Snake or Big Boss or whoever. You know, actually get to experience that. Or maybe like if it's too short, they could like combine the first 3 games and make it into like a, you know, and not just Metal Gear. Like, imagine if they remade Final Fantasy 1. You know, like those are games with so much potential that could be brought back, and they're just ignoring it. It's like you guys are just sitting on money. If I was at your studio,
if you were ahead, you would be like, "We're doing this right away, guys. All hands on deck."
All right, we're starting all over. You're fired. Get out of here.
Yeah. I had no idea that Kojima hates David. Yeah, I've heard about that. I don't know too much about it.
Hate is a strong word, but they never really got along. David Hayter likes him, but he seems to not like David Hayter for whatever reason. I don't know.
I guess it's similar to like Shinji Mikami not really liking, you know, like the OG cast of RE1, right? And stuff like that. Chance says was the same.
Shinji Mikami doesn't really like Resident Evil. Like,
Did
you know that after Resident Evil 1, he was like done? Like he was like, I want to go do some other stuff, and Capcom was like, no.
Moneymaker, no, we're gonna milk you.
Well, that's why he put Hideki Kamiya in charge of Resident Evil 2, because he just didn't want to do it. He was like, here, you're the director now, and he was like, what?
Chance says was the same with Crisis Core Reunion. Voice actor changed for Zack, and it's just not the same, but it's still a great game. But just have to get used to the new voice actor. That's another good point.
Exactly.
Sometimes you like the voice actors.
Why did they just pay residuals to the original actors and just keep their voices? Like, he had such a unique, iconic voice. I love Crisis Core. Like, I love that game. Oh my god.
I only played the demo. Like, it was a PSP game, right? Originally, or no? Was that a different? I only played the demo because it was really cool.
I'm not really that into 7, to be honest. Like, I never really. I mean, it's okay, but like, I never know what the big deal was. But Crisis Core, I loved. Like,
I was more of a Legends of Dragoons guy myself. So it's just, I don't know, the graphics were a little bit better in my opinion, but as a kid that's what I played. But I saw it in the trailer where his movements have been reanimated. It looks closer to it looks closer, but I don't know if they're using the same. Maybe they are. I mean, unlike OG, that didn't have motion capture in the gameplay, definitely. And as mentioned before, they have the classic and modern controls or cameras. But sorry, what were you saying?
Just trust me, as a game dev, like, trailers are very misleading. A lot of times, like, they just look like they work, but they don't. There's sometimes very early production stuff, or sometimes they do stuff that's only in the trailer and not even in the game.
And that's another good point. That's another good point too. Like, a lot of people, even Dead Rising fans, have been wanting to hear the original actor for Dead Rising. TJ, I don't remember his name, Rocolo, I think.
That ship has sailed. He's not coming back. Although
have you heard that he's that he said he didn't want to do Dead Rising? There was someone that commented that, and I was like, where'd you get this info?
I don't think that's true, because
Yeah.
He was the voice of William in Resident Evil 2 remake.
Oh,
So
interesting. I
it's
didn't know
really
that.
weird because they brought him back for that, but then he's not going to be Frank West. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm guessing
Yeah.
something happened with like
Mm,
negotiations or money or
yeah.
who knows. Like there's always, you never know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and a lot of actors are starting to stand up for themselves and be like, if you're not going to pay me, I'm not going to do it. And
Yep.
then, you know, oftentimes the companies will be like, fine, we'll go find non-union actors that are cheaper. So
Yeah.
screw you.
Yeah.
And nobody wins.
And
Except for
that's
the
exactly what's
non-union
happened
actor
with
who gets
Resident
picked.
Evil as well, right? I mean, there's so many actors that we've had before that they haven't brought back, and it's like, bro, like so many people. I talked to Roger Craig Smith, who was the Chris Redfield for a number of years, and he was telling me the same thing with the unions and stuff. Capcom just didn't want to hire him because of his union, and they wanted to go with other actors from different unions. And yeah, but he's like, I'm happy to come back, and he still remembers so many lines from his work. Like he still knows the character through and through, and that's very rare for an actor. As many of you guys know, some actors, you know, they do it as a job and then they never go back to it. They're like, oh, I'm doing other stuff.
Tara Strong is notorious for that, but she's been in so much stuff. I can't imagine she could remember like any of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, she says she'll go to like conventions and people will be like, "Oh my god, like I loved you and blah blah blah," and they'll like say something and she has no idea what they're talking about. She's like, "Yeah, that was fun."
Yeah. Dude, that's crazy. Yeah. But anyways, guys, I think that's where we'll leave off. Thank you to Kai Ink Ribbon for stopping by and chatting. This was a great talk. Thank you so much. I'd love to have you on again. And as mentioned, with Baldur's Gate 3, if you ever play that and you want some help because I know it's a hard game, hit me up, man. I'm down. I'm down to help you.
All right, I might need it because I don't even know what genre this is, but we'll see. But thanks a lot for having me on.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Well, anyways, guys, see ya. Before I say goodbye, make sure to go follow Kai if you have not. Make sure to go check out the links that we posted earlier on with his game Psycho Dive. And yeah, thank you so much, guys. Anyways, see ya.